probably got to do the TV thing. They didn't do that, so I know he's gonna be back there when he gets it. But I mean, it's been crazy. We done spent some money between Wednesday, tomorrow, and then tomorrow might be canceled because of the weather. So it's like we got 7 coming out here.
See if this thing is charging. Oh, it's charging. I'm just trying to charge. That's all right.
Oh,
I'm
that's
just.
your phone.
Yeah, it's just.
Okay.
This thing is very loose. It doesn't charge, so I'm just trying to get it back to something because I lost it in the car. I gotta get it fixed, man.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another week of National Action Network Live. And in the words of our great late attorney Michael Hardy, when you hear the cry, no justice, no peace, you know you are where the action is. My name is Nancy Darlene Crawford, and I am your host for this morning's broadcast. Today, we are joined by various leaders of our community and in the nation, bringing to you how you can get involved into the action with NAN Now. Our keynote speaker today will be none other than our president and founder, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. We welcome all of you who have joined us today live at National Action Network's House of Justice Auditorium, located at 106 West 145th Street and the corner of Lenox Avenue here in the village of Harlem. Welcome also to those of you watching us via live stream on our social media platforms and our website at www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Tune in to MSNBC's Politics Nation with Al Sharpton every Saturday and Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time live on MSNBC. Here are some announcements to keep you in the know. King Day Breakfast. On what would have been Dr. King's 96th birthday, National Action Network held our annual King Day Breakfast in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. Co-chaired by Reverend Sharpton, Martin Luther King III, and Andrea Waters King, the packed breakfast at the Mayflower Hotel featured special remarks from Vice President Kamala Harris, and other powerful speeches included one from Martin Luther King III, reminding everyone of his father's legacy, emphasizing the urgent need for action, unity, and a renewed commitment to justice. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Christian Clark, and other notables were also at the King Day Breakfast. MLK Weekend and with Nan. On Monday, all roads lead back to the nation's capital for our rally for justice and keeping Dr. King's dream alive. As Donald Trump is sworn in, we won't stand still. We will rise up, honor, and defend Dr. King's vision by rallying for justice, equality, and progress. On the federal holiday honoring Dr. King, we will gather at 10 a.m. at the historic AME Church for an urgent rally as our hard-won civil rights gains are under threat with this incoming administration. For more information on both of these events, please visit www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Preserving DEI. On Thursday, National Action Network held yet another protest calling for the preservation of diversity, equity, and inclusion in academia, corporate America, government, and all facets of society. Gathering, as always, outside the offices of hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman, Nan and supporters have sustained these weekly demonstrations for over a year now. When DEI is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. Passionately chanted the crowd. Nan's DEI Thursdays have called out Ackman's ongoing campaign against DEI and voiced our strong backing for more, not less, DEI measures. Rain, shine, or snow, we gather outside of Ackman's office with signage, protest chants, and plenty of passion. Things are slated to only get worse under a Trump administration. Nan and Reverend Sharpton will continue to lead the fight to preserve DEI so that society can actually reflect the diversity in our nation and increase opportunity for all. National Clergy Call. National Action Network convened a virtual National Clergy Call on Monday via Zoom. Reverend Sharpton and clergy from around the country discussed the Black church's critical role in preserving Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, the rally on Dr. King's federal holiday, the threats to our civil rights gains, and the ongoing fight for justice and equality. The clergy call also offered special prayers for those affected by the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, and we heard from clergy living in the areas directly impacted by the fires, which have killed dozens and destroyed over 10,000 structures. Nan held this national clergy call so that everyone could come together in faith, action, and unity. At a time with so many challenges, we must organize and support one another more than ever. Welcome to all of you who have tuned in and joined us also via live stream at www.nationalactionnetwork.net and also live on Facebook at National Action Network. If this is your first time joining us and or if you are not a member of NAN, we welcome you to NAN and invite you to join us and get into the action today. For more information and to join, you may visit www.nationalactionnetwork.net or call 877-626-4651 or text the word NAN to 59769. Welcome. Let us welcome Change Choir soloist Tisha Hunter under the direction of our guest musical director, Jason Wright.
Come on, clap your hands this morning. Oh, I just wanna praise you forever and ever and ever for all you've done for me. I just wanna praise you forever and ever and ever. Thank you, Jesus, for blessing Good morning. Good morning and welcome, NAN family, and all who've joined us this morning. Every Saturday we gather here at the House of Justice for the Saturday Action Rally, where under the inimitable leadership of our founder and president, the Reverend Al Sharpton, we center on the issues challenging our community here in Harlem, in New York City, across the state, and across the nation. And we focus on the actions that we collectively must take to ensure that our lives are better. At today's rally, we're going to do the same, with an emphasis today on public policy. Every year, in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose life of service was dedicated not just to programs and services, to us just getting by, but to us actually getting ahead and staying ahead. His life was dedicated to systems and structural reform and change to bring about civil and human and economic rights, economic justice for Black Americans. So every year on King Day, in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, we at NAN, we come together and we take the time to hear from our elected officials at the city level, at the state level, and even at the federal level, to hear directly from them what are their aims, what are their commitments, what are their promises to ensuring that Black Americans and all Americans actually have what they are entitled to in this nation: civil and human rights and economic rights. So that's what we're doing this morning. We typically do this on King Day, but this year, King Day, which is Monday, the holiday, inauguration happens to fall on King Day. King Day doesn't fall on Inauguration Day. The inauguration is falling on King Day. All right? You all need to remember that. We all need to remember that. So here's the deal. That's what's happening this year. And we are nimble. We're flexible. We know how to shift. So we're going to be down in D.C., many of us on King Day, speaking out about injustice, doing our part to recognize and hold sacred the memory of Dr. King and live into it. But that didn't mean that public policy here in New York shouldn't happen, that the forum shouldn't happen. So we're using this morning's Saturday Action Rally to have our annual public policy forum. What's going to happen over the course of the next few hours is we're going to hear from our elected officials. We're going to hear them, and then what are we going to do, family? We're going to hold them accountable. Amen? They're not here to just talk at us. They're here to talk and tell us what they're going to do, and then we're going to work with them to hold them accountable. So we're going to get started. Now, before we do, I just have to tell you that while we're here today and we'll be down in D.C. on Monday, we were there this past Wednesday where we held our annual Martin Luther King breakfast. And it was a tremendous occasion. Even though the day was changed because it typically is on the Monday, King Day, the holiday, people showed up in massive numbers. And what was beautiful was that the energy and the spirit of Dr. King filled that space, filled that place. And despite all of the difficult days that lie ahead, as Dr. King reminded us on the eve of his assassination, there was a spirit that attended that gathering that let us know that hope is not lost. We are still in this fight. Battles may be lost, i.e. the presidency, but the war hasn't been won. Lost, right? We're going to keep up and we're going to keep going. And Vice President Kamala Harris was there to remind us of that. So we're going to bring that momentum to this moment. I'm going to get out of the way so our elected officials get engaged. And they're here to tell us what they're going to do. And then what are we going to do? Hold them accountable. Let's get going.
Thank you, Jennifer Jones. Our first speaker will be D.A. Melinda Katz of Queens, New York, followed by Mayor Hector C. Laura of Passaic, New Jersey. Let us greet them at this time. All the years I've been coming, I didn't realize the secret is to show up at 9 o'clock. I want to thank Reverend Sharpton. I want to thank Nan for the work they do. I want to thank my colleagues that are here. I also want to thank all of you. I walked in and many of you asked about my kids. They're 13 and 16 now. Anybody wants them, I'll pick them up when they're 25. This is my 6th year as the District Attorney of Queens County. 6th year. And I am proud to be here at NAN on this very special day. And I'm unhappy that the inauguration was on NAN's Day, Monday, Martin Luther King Day. But we're glad to be here on a Saturday. But I have to tell you the issue of accountability, which was brought up a few times today. This is my 6th year, which means that I went through 4 years and then got reelected last year. And I wonder what accountability means in my house, when we talk about it with my children, but also in my office. We have 60,000 arrests a year. We have 47,000 arraignments a year. We have guns coming in from Virginia and North Carolina that are bought legally and then sold illegally in the city of New York. We need to hold those individuals accountable, but I will tell you the best accountability you can get is when our young people never end up in the criminal justice system to begin with. And that comes with education and mentorship. That comes with prosecuting those that are accountable for the crimes that they commit, but it also comes with a DA's office that understands that it's not just about prosecution. It's about doing what we did in my office, which is hiring a youth officer, a youth individual, a teacher, a special ed teacher, whose sole responsibility is to go into the school system, starting in junior high school, and making sure kids have an outlet for those needs that they have so they never end up in my courtroom. That means putting at least $3 million of money on the street for youth groups and cure violence groups to make sure that there are other paths that people can get help. And we do that every year. That means vacating judgments, over 100 judgments that we vacated of prosecutions over the last few years in my office, because we have a conviction integrity unit that works in my office with people across the city of New York to vacate convictions. So Martin Luther King was a man of faith and went through the country and through the world and held people to high standards. And as I enter my 6th year as district attorney, I took stock of my office. I wanted to make sure my office was serving a community, not just being prosecutors in that job. And I value the conversations I've had with Nan. I value the conversations I used to have with Michael Hardy, God bless him and rest his soul. I value the conversations I've had with the Reverend and people here at NAN. And I want to thank them for the work that they do. They are the perfect example that you don't always have to agree on everything, but you can reach common ground when you have what's called in this world, maybe sometimes considered a dirty word, is conversation and common sense. And that's what I believe is the path forward. So as we celebrate Martin Luther King Day again together, I thank you for the work that you've done. I just wanted you to know that our office takes stock all the time. And as I enter this new year that I am facing as the DA, it is important that we continue to work together, that we hold each other accountable, and that we make sure that there are paths not to enter the criminal justice system. Not only prosecuting, but not to enter the criminal justice, and educating our children. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hector Laura, and I'm the mayor of the city of Passaic, New Jersey. It is an honor and a privilege. A couple people from Passaic, okay. It's a privilege and an honor to be with you this morning. I want to thank the Reverend Al Sharpton and the Nan family for this invitation to join with you. You know, as I was sitting back there, I had considered the words that opened up the ceremony and the response from the crowd of stand up and fight back. It hit hard. It hit hard while I was sitting there because it reminded me of a quote of Dr. Martin Luther King, that men can only ride your backs if your back is bent. Meaning that one must be complicit to a certain extent to be oppressed. One must allow that oppression, that we have a responsibility, a duty to fight back when we see injustice, any injustice at any time. You know, for many of us, we see the world and we realize that we may be entering into some dark times. Dr. King once said that he was cognizant of the fact that it must become dark for you to see the stars. And I believe that there are stars among us that are willing to stand up and fight back. Stars amongst us within our youth that are willing to pick up the torch and continue the legacy. As I was hearing about the fact that the 20th is King's Day, and it's important that we honor and remember his work, his vision, and his dream. On the 20th can be King's Day, but every day can be Legacy Day, because each day we are charged with that responsibility to continue his legacy and fight against injustice and fight for those who are most vulnerable, those who are often considered marginalized, those who perhaps are in desperate need of leaders that are willing to amplify the voices of those that go unheard. There was a time where perhaps the fear was that the amazing and brilliant flames of conviction among leaders could be snuffed out by the constant injustice that they confront. Today, I admit that I don't fear that the flame will be snuffed out from these leaders, but rather bought out. Bought out by those who have influence and money, and we must charge and, as was stated, hold our leaders accountable to ensure that souls aren't sold and that the community is heard. You know, I've been thinking much about what I would share, especially as a mayor coming from your neighboring state, what you could hold me accountable for. Allow me to speak to other communities, because it's extremely important that we understand that being allies goes far beyond the opportunities where we stand together in front of cameras or cut ribbons, but we must stand together during the fight. Stand up for the justice of all, because injustice to any is injustice to everyone. We have a responsibility not just to come together for the cultural events, the parades, but to come together when one person is facing injustice, when one person is falsely charged, when one person is discriminated against. And just because we may not be uniform in our beliefs or our approaches to life, we must be united in a commitment and a vision that we must stand up and fight back. Because in a perfect world, there would be no need for a house of justice, because a perfect world would be a world of justice, but we don't live in a perfect world. So I thank God for this house of justice. I thank God for all the community leaders and all the members that are willing to stand up and fight back when it is necessary. I stand here as a mayor from across the state, accepting this invitation, privileged and humbled at the idea that I can be on this stage, stand up on this mic and share a few words as a son of immigrants who spoke no English when they came to this country, who only wanted to work hard and provide a future for their children that they may perhaps grow up and be productive members of society. I'm cognizant of this, that whether you are crying out for justice or gritando por justicia, it is the same sentiment, no matter the language it's in, because justice may be difficult to define, but it's easy to identify because we can feel injustice. Whether you are a child, a teenager, an adult, or a senior, you know injustice when you confront it. And we have an innate desire to be treated equally. So I would ask that together we fight back. We fight back no matter what we face. So on behalf of the city of Passaic, where we have worked on initiatives of affordability, inclusion, and continue to fight, I'm here to stand with you, not just here in Harlem, not just here in New York, but anywhere where the fight continues. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. Let us welcome our next set of speakers, Council Member Julie Minion of the District 5, Congress Member Adriana Asplat, New York's 13th Congressional District, and Comptroller Brad Lander, the New York City Comptroller. Let us welcome them at this time.
Thank you so much. I'm Councilwoman Julie Menon, and it's great to be back in the House of Justice. I first of all want to thank Reverend Sharpton and Nan for their incredible leadership. I have had the honor of working with Reverend Sharpton for over 20 years. And as I was on my way here, I thought about the first time I worked with Reverend Sharpton and Nan was after 9/11 when I chaired the community board in Lower Manhattan and I stood up in favor of the Islamic Cultural Center and mosque at Ground Zero. And as a result of that, had death threats. And it was Reverend Sharpton who came to our community and stood with us against that hate. And that is really, yes, thank you for clapping in the back. And that is what he does time and time again. So we were asked to come and talk a little bit about the work we're doing to commemorate the legacy of Dr. King. And I can't think of more important work that we can do than to protect at this vital time our immigrant communities. I served as the city's 2020 census director, working with Reverend Sharpton. And at that time, President Trump put a question on the census that hadn't been on in 70 years. And that question was, are you a US citizen? And we took that case, we sued the Trump administration, took that case to the Supreme Court, and we won. And I mention that because here we are once again with the Trump administration coming in with the threat of mass deportations across this city. And we need to, in the words of Dr. King, stand up and make sure that people are seen, that they're heard, and that they're counted. And that is exactly what we're going to do once again. In the 2020 census, thanks to the leadership of Reverend Sharpton and groups. I see HTC in the house, and I really want to say thank you, HTC, and its president, Rich Morocco. Thanks to the incredible coalition we had on the census, we finished #1 in the country, meaning billions of dollars came back to the city. So what is going to happen now with the incoming Trump administration? They are once again going to threaten our immigrant communities. Are we going to allow that? Exactly. We are going to stand up, protect our immigrant communities who are under the threat of mass deportation, and that is one of the best ways that we can frankly honor the legacy of Dr. King and all the principles that he stood for. Thank you.
Good morning, Nam. Good morning, Nam. Dominic, good morning, Nam. Okay, thank you for being here once again to celebrate the legacy of the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year's theme for King's Day of observing is Mission Possible, protecting freedom, justice, democracy, in the spirit of nonviolence. So I want to talk to you briefly about two things. The first thing is the meaning of a sanctuary city. Because as Malcolm X used to say, we've been bamboozled, hookwind, led astray on the meaning of a sanctuary city. Let me tell you what a sanctuary city is. A sanctuary city is when a mom takes her 6-year-old to school and they don't have any papers and she could feel assured that the principal is not going to call ICE on them. That's a sanctuary city. A sanctuary city is when a senior goes to the emergency room and is felt reassured that the nurse is not going to call the authorities on him or her. A sanctuary city is when a woman, a victim of domestic violence, goes to the precinct to report the batterer, and she feels reassured that they're not going to cuff her, arrest her, and deport her. That's a sanctuary city. And this location, this church, this house of justice is a sensitive location. So when you're talking about the mass deportation efforts that will begin on Monday in Chicago or maybe here in New York, we got to come together in the spirit of the theme of Martin Luther King, in the spirit of justice and democracy, and ensure that this house is not raided by ICE. That an emergency room is not raided by ICE. That a school is not surrounded by ICE officers. That a funeral home is not raided by ICE. That's what sensitive locations are. And so now more than ever, we got to reboot. You know what happens sometimes when your iPhone gets stuck and you can't get it to work? You reboot it. You turn it off and on. Now it's time to reboot. To make sure that we stand for the principles that are sacred to our country, to our state, to our city, and continue to fight to make sure that this city remains a sanctuary city and that this house of justice continues to be a sacred, sensitive location. God bless you and keep the faith.
Thank you. Just as a friendly reminder, we would ask that all speakers, please, your time is 5 minutes. Thank you. Let us welcome Assemblyman Al Taylor, the Assembly District of Upper Manhattan.
Good morning, everyone. Come on, good morning, everyone. Something said to me, this is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice. Somebody said, oh, magnify. Let us rejoice. So listen, this is a great time. Just imagine, if you would, all of us being right there with Dr. King in those historical moments. But it wasn't so. All the folks together today was not like it was back then. And folks were always probably trying to remind him to stay in his place and don't rock the boat, because you're going to make it harder for everybody else. I just stopped by this morning to say thank you to Dr. Sharpton and Nan and what he's been able to do and continue to keep the dream alive. But it only is alive as it resonates in us. It is only alive as it resonates in us. It is only alive as it resonates in us, okay? So that means each one of us has a responsibility to keep the dream alive. Amen? Listen, say amen, amen real quick and I'll be gone, because they said we got 5 minutes. I get out of here before 5 minutes, I guarantee it. I just want to share something just before I leave, if I can do that. And it looks like this. It's a Dr. King quote. And it says this: in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemy, but the silence of our friends. Come on. At the end, I don't want to butcher that, so I'm going to run it back one more time. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. In the diaspora, the black struggle is realer today than ever before. It's realer today than ever before, because there is a society and a condition that's happening in D.C. that says we want to take you back, right? And I'm reminded when Grandma would get up, there was a song that said, ain't nobody gonna turn me round, turn me around. Ain't nobody gonna turn me round, turn me round. So at the end of the day, if we will use what we know, I think it was Dr. Bob McCullough that says, each one, teach one. Each one, teach one. Now, as I look across this room, I'm going to say the average age is about 21. Y'all look good. I see my good friend and new member to the Assembly, Assembly Member Jordan, right. And the youngest member to ever be elected black into the New York State Assembly, Khalil Anderson, walking in the door. I just want us to know that although it may look like it's impossible, it is reachable and the dream is yet attainable. And let me leave with this. There was a book I read some time ago, and it was called Nehemiah. And in the book of Nehemiah, you had a servant, and he was tasked with the idea of going back to his community and transforming that community. But check this out. When he looked at what was going on, he did an assessment. And then he came back to the people, and this is what he said to them. Do you see the conditions in which we are living in? And my question today is, do you see the conditions in which we're living in today? And if you do, he said this, let us, somebody say, let us, let us rebuild together. God bless you.
Thank you. Let us welcome at this time New York City Comptroller Brad Lander.
Good morning, National Action Network. Good morning. Both in bright times and in dark times, it is good to be in the House of Justice. And let's be clear, these are dark times. Martin Luther King Day this year is darkened by the inauguration of a racist, anti-democratic president set on taking our country back to the dark days of bigotry. So I'm glad that Nan is counter-programming the inauguration on Monday in D.C. Give it up for the folks going down there in this cold weather to stand up and be heard. Dr. King also knew about dark times, of course. He knew about backlash. In an address to the National Conference on New Politics in 1967, he said this, "Yes, the hour is dark. Evil comes forth in the guise of good. Ever since the birth of our nation," he said, "white America has had a schizophrenic personality on the question of race. She has been torn between selves. A self in which she proudly possesses the great principle of democracy, and a self in which she madly practices the antithesis of democracy, causing America to take a step backwards simultaneously with every step forward on the question of racial justice. That step backwards," he said, "has a new name today. It is called the white backlash. But the white backlash," he said, "is nothing new. It is the surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of black power, nor by the unfortunate recent wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today," he said in 1967, "is the same problem that has characterized America ever since the black man landed in chains on the shores of this nation." Dr. King foresaw moments like this. Dr. King understood Donald Trump, and he knew who white moderates would blame just in moments like now. So, what would Dr. King have us do in this dark hour of white backlash? I believe two things. First, as he said, a man dies when he refuses to stand up for what is right. Stand up for what is right. Stand up for what is right. In my work in the New York City Comptroller's Office, this is what standing up for what is right means. When we invest the $285 billion in pension funds that are the retirement security for our teachers, firefighters, police officers, standing up for what is right means this: despite the pushback against DEI, against so-called woke investing, we are not giving one single inch in our work for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the management of New York City's pension fund, not one single inch. Now, second, at the same time, we do have to show more clearly than we have in the past that the value of justice extends to everyone. We have to show New Yorkers that you can do work for racial justice while making life in this city better, easier, more affordable, safer, more thriving for everyone. We got to show that governing with attention to justice can be done along with governing with attention to the outcomes that matter to all working families in New York. And fortunately, when we invest those pension dollars, we have the opportunity to do both. So, as I announced right here at this podium with Reverend Sharpton just a few weeks ago, during my tenure as controller, the city's pension funds have increased our investments with minority and women-owned asset managers by over $6 billion. That's a 37% increase from $16 billion to $23 billion. And unlike many other MWBE programs, the biggest share of those investment managers are Black investment managers. And here's the beautiful thing. Our Black and Latino and Asian and women-owned asset managers outperform their benchmarks and outperform their peers by 5%. The investment firms owned by people of color and women are among the pension fund's best performers. Diversified investments reduce risk and they increase returns. And that isn't woke, that's just the truth. And here's what that means. Those diverse asset managers, they contribute to our fund's strong performance. And last year, that meant we saved taxpayers $1.8 billion that we could spend instead on affordable housing and on our schools and on our parks and on safety in our neighborhoods. And we could do that at the very same time that we are closing the enormous racial wealth gap that we should be ashamed of in New York. My office did a study of the racial wealth gap that shows New York's is bigger than America's. The median New York white family has a household income of $277,000. The median Black New York family has a median household income of $18,000. The racial wealth gap in New York is 15 to 1, larger than the national racial wealth gap of 9 to 1. But when we move money to Black and Latino asset managers, then they hire people, then they reduce that racial wealth gap. So even as they are earning more money to protect our teachers and our firefighters and our school crossing guards, we, the pension funds, are striking a blow for better outcomes in New York and better racial justice right here in New York City. So I just wanted to close out. In her book, The Sum of Us, Heather McGhee describes this. She talks about what she calls drained pool politics, how in the South, white Southerners filled in and closed their public pools rather than share them with their Black neighbors when they were required to integrate. Drained pool politics that took away their own swimming pools. But what she says we can do instead is earn a solidarity dividend, that when we govern with attention to justice, we also get better outcomes. And that outperformance I told you in the New York City Pension Fund, those are solidarity dividends, both for justice and for New York City. But here's the thing, we need solidarity dividends in housing. We need solidarity dividends in safety on our streets. We need solidarity dividends in the schools of this city at this dark moment. Compelled by what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now, those are the kinds of solidarity dividends that we must earn for all New Yorkers. Thank you very much, National Action Network. It's an honor to celebrate Martin Luther King with you.
Thank you. Let us welcome at this time Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson, followed by Bronx DA Darcel D. Clark.
Good morning, family. Good morning, National Action Network, House of Justice. Truly giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. Before I ask him for anything, I thank him for everything. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here in this space on this Saturday morning. I am filled with the Spirit of God, knowing that he is moving us in the right direction for this time, this reason, and this season. I want to honor our leader, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, and the entire NAN team. I want to honor all the distinguished board members of NAN, my sister, Jennifer Jones Austin, my brother, Ruben Diaz Jr. I want to celebrate Sister Rachel Norlinger and my sisters, Ashley Sharpton and Dominique Sharpton. And I want to honor Youth Huddle that is serving our young people in a real way, making a difference in the lives of our young people. And to all of my colleagues who are here, thank you for joining together to recognize the life, the legacy, and the labor of the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This weekend, this celebration where we affirm our commitment to God's people, where we recognize that this work is not about titles, but this is about assignment and purpose, knowing that we have a purpose to make a difference, to lift up families, to give them hope and opportunity, and make sure that we leave footprints for the next generation to follow. As the Bronx Borough President, home to 1.4 million residents, the birthplace of hip-hop, the home of salsa, I am honored to stand before you representing the Boogie Down Bronx. We truly know that the Bronx, in the spirit of Dr. King, in the spirit of his legacy, fighting for racial equality and social justice, serving all people, making sure that we know that this is about our promise and our potential. The Bronx is a borough of opportunities, a global destination. We are excited about moving the Bronx forward in a real way, from reducing unemployment to creating equity in housing, stabilizing families with pathways to college and careers and home ownership, and lifting families out of poverty, letting young people know that they are stars and not statistics, making sure that we invest in our families, people with disabilities, our children, our veterans, and our older adults. We are excited about the work we've done in the Bronx, but we need your support because this is year 4. It is the year in which we will return to our community to talk about the work that we are doing. Last year in 2024, House of Justice, we talked about 24 being the year in which we want more in 24. More programs, more jobs, more opportunities, and more blessings. This year, family, our message, the Bronx will strive and thrive in 25. We are not playing when it comes to addressing income inequality and housing discrimination. All of what we face in the Bronx, the setbacks that we have encountered have been our preparation for a comeback moment, folks. And we need all of you to join us in this work. Walk with us on this journey as we encourage, empower, and motivate our people to be their very best. That is how you honor Dr. King. You be an upstander and not a bystander. You do something in your community to make a difference. You don't need the title, folks, but if you do the work, the title will come. And so I need everyone here at House of Justice to realize that as we move forward, as we honor the life and the legacy of Dr. King, we recognize the dream, we recognize what we have done and achieved, but we recognize that the work remains unfulfilled. And so if you understand, if you know your purpose, if you know your assignment, then I look forward to even more work. Monday, January 20th, we will be having an interfaith celebration at Trinity Baptist Church at 10 a.m. in the Northeast Bronx. And right after that, we're doing a relief effort collection drive for all the families displaced by a fire that we had 2 weeks ago in the Allerton community. It is a day on and not a day off. And so I empower, encourage all of you to do this work together, because when we join together, when we walk together, we are truly better together. Thank you so much, folks. God bless you, House of Justice. God bless you, National Action Network. And let's celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To God be all the glory.
Good morning, House of Justice. I'm Bronx DA Darcel Clark, and you all know good and well I don't like going after Vanessa, right? You all know that. But yet and still, they continue to do it. But thank you so much to the Honorable Reverend Al Sharpton, to the National Action Network, to the board members, all of you, and to the community. Thank you so much. You know, I would be remiss not to mention the fact that my mentor, the late Michael Hardy, is not here. Every year when I came here, Michael always greeted me. And he was such a mentor and role model to lawyers like me who fight for justice each and every day. I miss him every day. God bless him. May he rest in peace. So I greet you from the corridors of the Bronx Hall of Justice on 161st Street to the Nan House of Justice. I'm just honored to be here to celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He would have been 96 years old this past January 15th. Let's give him a round of applause for all that he has done for us. The fact that he has left us a legacy of respect, integrity, and accountability, and we uphold those principles each and every day. And but not for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I would not be here as the first black woman elected district attorney in the state of New York. These are trying times that we're going through, and it's the 800-pound elephant in the room is that January 20th would be Dr. King. We will be celebrating his birthday, and it's going to be the inauguration day of somebody in Washington, right? I thought I was going to be down there watching the first black woman president being inaugurated, but that wasn't meant to be. But that doesn't mean that we don't still celebrate the life and legacy and the work that Reverend Dr. King and the example that he left behind for us. He said life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I could tell you if Dr. King was here today, he would be focusing on our right to have peace and safety in our country. He would be out here leading marches and being a voice against the gun violence that we've seen that's claiming our young black boys and men each and every day, that I have to deal with each and every day, that's destroying our lives and our families and our communities and watching them become victims as well as perpetrators of the crime because of the underinvestment in our communities. He would be decrying the fact that we don't have those resources, that there's inequity in education and jobs and housing. And he would be in the streets mentoring these young people because that's what we need. We need to invest in our young people. That's how we're going to turn this around. And we have the ability to do this. And I know that we can and that we will. He would be so proud of the clergy that we have in this country right now, the work that the clergy is doing. I use them as partners each and every day because they stand in the gap between the families that are suffering and those who are aspiring to greatness. So I'm so happy to be there. As Bronx District Attorney, my priority is justice in all forms, however I can deliver it, for crime victims as well as those who are accused of crime. We can have public safety and fairness at the same time, and that's what I do each and every day as the Bronx District Attorney. I'm in my 9th year, right? But I tell you what, thank you. 9 years, I can't believe it, right? But I will never get used to losing our young boys and men to prison and jail. I will not get used to that. And I'm going to continue to advocate for resources to make sure that we have the prevention and intervention before they end up there. I stand in the middle and in the gap to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I promise that I'm going to continue to do that. And it's because of the legacy of Dr. King that I know that that is the way to go. That it's not sending everybody to jail and prison, but to giving them second chances as well. And I'm going to continue to do that. So, the country is divided. We know that. But we can't focus on that. We have to focus on what we need to do to get the democracy that we want and that we deserve. And we will continue to make sure that we do that. So, again, I am so happy to be the district attorney of the Bronx. I am so happy to say that Dr. King said, darkness can't turn away darkness, only light can do that. And, hate can't do away with hate, only love can do that. That's the work that we're going to continue to do as a community, as a nation, and in Bronx County. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you. Let us welcome at this time New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapolio.
Thank you for the extra O. It's to Napoli, and it's great to be back once again celebrating Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you, National Action Network, for once again convening us. What an impressive lineup of public officials. Some of us were in the back. A lot of us are right here. You're going to be hearing from all of them. And I think in New York City and New York State, we're really fortunate that we have elected officials who understand the vision that Dr. King put out for all of us. It is my privilege to be your state controller and to try in some small way advance the agenda that Dr. King put out there that inspired me as a young person growing up when Dr. King was still alive, hearing his speeches, watching him on TV. You know, in his day, he was called many things: visionary, prophet, drum major, agitator. To me, he's someone who represents the moral compass that this country still so desperately needs. As others have said, and I'm sure will continue to say, there's a lot of uncertainty as we gather. We know the presidential inauguration day is coming up. A lot of us are feeling very left out of that process, and certainly feeling that more than ever we need that moral compass that Dr. King laid out for all of us. But as one who studied history in college, I've always had a belief that when you look at the expanse of the American story, America is a nation that moves forward. Do we sometimes stall in the lane? Absolutely. And maybe this is one of those moments of we're stalling. But at the end of the day, we do move forward. And I think that's what Dr. King's message in life was all about. It was a sense of optimism about the possibility of America. You think of the challenges that he had to face: angry mobs, violence directed at him, targeted by the US government at times, facing unsurmountable odds in terms of creating change in this country. Yet he never gave up. And he became more resolute as the years went by. Why? Because he had that sense of optimism about what America could be. And I think that's an important part of his legacy for us to keep in mind, especially at a time of challenge and disappointment. Let's not lose our optimism. Let's not lose that sense that the fight can continue, and in fact, we will move this country forward. And certainly if we keep in mind the vision of Dr. King, that's a key way how I think we can move forward, focusing on justice, on opportunity, on equality, on treating each other with fairness and an openness. Certainly it's what we try to do in our work with the Controller's Office. I know City Controller Brad Lander was here. He tries to do the same at the city level. One of the things that we try to do, my colleagues who are in the state Senate and the Assembly, the governor, they are the ones who make the policy choices, but we try very hard with our reports to shine a light on those communities and those families that are being left behind. Child poverty in New York: 1 in 5 children in our state are living in poverty. High poverty rates, particularly in the city, in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. You compare them to cities of comparable size across the United States of America. Those three cities are in the top 10 of cities in the United States that have high child poverty rates. That's something we can't be proud of. Food insecurity: 1 in 9 New York households unable to get enough food. That's 875,000 families in New York, one of the wealthiest states in the Union. 1 in 5 households facing severe housing crisis. More to talk about, I'll say quickly, because I know there are others who we're going to hear from. But we're going to continue to use our power as an investor to make sure that corporate America doesn't retreat on diversity and inclusion in the workplace in each and every way. And we are continuing, you could applaud that, we're continuing our efforts to expand opportunities for women and minority-owned firms. I'm very proud of the track record that we have here in New York State. February 14th, for those of you who are interested, please be in touch with our office. Let us know. We will let you know about how to participate in our 18th Women and Minority-Owned Investment Conference. I'll end it there. You have others to hear from. Happy birthday, Dr. Martin Luther King.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the live broadcast on 107.5 WBLS. Let us welcome our president and founder, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton.
No justice. No justice. No justice. No justice. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? When do we want it? When do we want it? Shake hands with the person next to you. Tell them you love them. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for the Saturday Action Rally, and for you that are here live at the House of Justice, 106 West 145th Street in the village of Harlem, and for you that are listening live on WBLS 107.5 FM in New York, and for you that are watching all over the country on Impact Television, we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning where the action is. Give a hand to our presider. Give a hand. Let me say we changed the annual Martin Luther King Public Policy Forum from Martin Luther King holiday to today because some of our officials have to be in Washington for the inauguration. We will be in Washington where we will be having our rally, and we're going to rally at Metropolitan AME Church, the church where Frederick Douglass was funeralized, place where we brought Rosa Parks' body. As Donald Trump puts his hand up to be sworn in the 47th President of the United States, we will be 3 miles away putting our hands up, taking an oath to keep Dr. King's dream alive. The most anti-Dr. King policy president since Dr. King's assassination is Donald Trump. And we're going to make it very clear that we are not there to protest the inauguration. We're not January 6th insurrectionists, but we're there to affirm who we are. And we're going to stand up and affirm that. And we want everybody, we have buses leaving here, buses from all over the country because of weather. We were going to march to the church, but we're going to let folks not march if the weather is as bad as if it is, the buses will roll up and we'll march. But let me say we have several of our officials that always come, and we're going to hear from them. We have, of course, the governor, the mayor, the U.S. Senator, everybody here, and we've already heard from some. And we ask them to come every year to talk about what Dr. King in his dream are they enacting and they are doing. The issue for us that is going to be clearly central is the issue of DEI. We are concerned that the incoming administration said they're going after DEI, and there's going to be an executive order, we're told. In fact, I told the mayor the other night, I know he had to meet with President-elect on the city business. I told him, please don't let him deal with DEI. And he said, nobody's done more about black business than Mayor Adams. But I told him, I said, I realize you got to meet with him. I'm glad I don't. And what he's doing to DEI is something that we see as a civil rights issue. And I'm not going to trade name calling with Donald Trump. I'm not going to call him names because he called me names, because I've been trained better than to deal with that. But I am going to fight DEI.
And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to outline in Washington on Monday. If you do not want to have diversity in your boards, in your employment, and in your C-suite, then we're going to make sure you don't have diversity among your consumers. We're going to boycott some companies. So Mark Morial and all of us, we're going to be there. You don't want no diversity? Then y'all shouldn't have no diversity. Y'all moving these mics around too. Y'all getting me nervous here. Y'all can let the mics stay where they at. They ain't bothering nobody. Hello? Y'all stop moving. That's how they got Malcolm. I don't want all that moving around here. Y'all was sitting down, I come out. Now I come out, all of a sudden y'all start moving mics. Sit down. I'm trying to not go back to Brownsville on you, but we're live on WBLS 107.5. I try to behave, but you know, Chuck Schumer come from Flatbush and I come from Brownsville. We know how to rumble up in here now, y'all. Don't be messing with Chuck and me. He was Chuck D before he was Senator Chuck. Let us hear from some of our officials. Again, our agenda is DEI. And we're going to fight to preserve voting rights. And we're going to fight to protect our elected officials that stand up for us. Those that don't stand up for us, we are not standing up with them. Is that right? Let us hear from the majority leader for at least a couple more days of the United States Senator, our friend Senator Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, Rev. When the Rev and I are here, Brooklyn is in the house. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here today. What better place than to celebrate this legacy in the house that the Reverend built right here at NAN. And let me just say this. We celebrate this wonderful holiday in a few days. Think about it. It's the only holiday on our calendar that commemorates one man. Now, we have Mother's Day for the mothers, and Father's Day for the fathers, and Veterans Day for the veterans, and President's Week for the presidents, but only one holiday for one man, and that is Dr. King's Day. Because he was so unique and so singular and so special. And I'm very proud that it's a national holiday, because as a congressman, I helped make it happen. I carried the legislation with some others that created this national holiday, and you would have been amazed at the bigotry, the outright bigotry against all of us and Dr. King when we tried to pass that legislation. But Dr. King would have told us to persist, we did, and now we're celebrating from one end of America to the other, the greatness of Dr. King. And let me just say this, what did he do? So many things. But the way I like to look at it is he hoisted a mirror on his broad shoulders, and with his brilliance, with his eloquence, and with his faith, he forced America to look into that mirror. And America didn't like what it saw. And that began the slow, inexorable path to change that we are fighting for, continuing to fight for right now. And let me tell you, as majority leader, we did a lot. We put in 235 federal judges, 2/3 people of color, 2/3 women, a record number of black men, black women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women on the bench. And why is that more important now than ever? Because when they try to take away democracy, which they will, as Dr. King knew, one of the best, probably the best, especially with this Congress, the best court, the place to go to preserve our rights are the courts. And you go to the district courts, and these new judges will be our first line of defense. And that is why Senator Gillibrand and I worked so hard to get all these bench people on the bench, including our first black woman, Ketanji Brown Jackson, as U.S. Supreme Court Justice. So we got a lot to do, and we got to fight. Let me just say in conclusion, because I know a lot of people want to speak, and I'm going, you know, in New York, we did pretty good. We elected 3 more Democrats and knocked out some Republicans. I'm swearing one of them in upstate in a few hours, so I'm going to be briefer than I usually am. We have times of trouble. But what would Dr. King tell us? Because he knew one thing, that if you persist and persist and persist, we'll succeed. The scriptures guided him, they can guide us and should. The prophet Amos always rang in his ears. Let justice run down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And when everything came down on him, and they put him in jail, and they cursed at him, and they did everything, and ultimately they took his life from us. But throughout his life, he never gave up. He never gave up. He said, we will overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. He would tell us, bend that arc. Don't give up. Fight, 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 and we will succeed. Happy Dr. King Day, everybody. Fight, fight, fight.
Senator Chuck Schumer. Let me bring, you know, several years ago, David Patterson, who was governor at the time, called me and said they were indecisive about who was going to fill the U.S. Senate seat that Hillary Clinton had left. And there was speculation about several candidates, Speaker Adams, and he called me and asked me to take Caroline Kennedy to lunch at Sylvia's, because I had taken Obama and others. So I took Caroline Kennedy, and I thought that was going to be who he appointed to fill that seat. And after that, he told me to, who did I have speaking Saturday morning? I said, I'm speaking. He says, I got somebody I want you to put on the on your list of people to speak. I said, well, who? He says, a woman in Congress named Gillibrand. I said, who is that? He said, you'll know by Saturday. And Thursday, he announced her as the U.S. Senator, who's now been elected and reelected. And she came and spoke that Saturday, and then she said, now I'll take questions. That's a whole, we don't do that. You don't know our crowd. You get some tough questions here. She said, no, and she stood here the whole hour and answered every question. And we've never forgot that. She's been a real backbone to a lot of the legislation that we support. And we're going to hear from her, then the governor, because they both broke in their schedules to be with us this morning. But let's hear from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
Well, I just want to thank our Reverend for being such a champion, such a leader, such a formidable foe. He is somebody who never gives up, never gives in, never tires. He's extraordinary. Now, that first meeting was 15 years ago. I was nursing an infant. I had blonde hair. It's now white. We all change over many years, but what has never changed is how much he cares about this community and how hard he's willing to fight for it. So thank you to Reverend Sharpton for having us here today. We are so grateful to you. So I want to recognize both Senator Schumer, who just went upstate. Our governor's about to go upstate, too. Our governor made a huge difference in actually changing the balance of power in New York. That's why they're going. We had 7 battleground seats in New York, and we won 5 of them, and that's because of governor's leadership. Thank you, Madam Governor. So I love coming here for the celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose spirit and tradition is what informs the National Action Network. It's why it was founded. Dr. King believed in the power of collective action, of going out into the world to fight for what's right. He knew even when he faced enormous challenges, death threats, constant hate, constant obstacles, that love would someday be what triumphs over hate. He wrote in his 1963 book, Strength to Love, returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. On Monday, Americans across the country will celebrate Dr. King's legacy of love, but we will also inaugurate a president who does not share those values, who often breeds the opposite. And many of us deeply oppose what he stands for. I know the next 4 years will be difficult for many of us, especially for nonprofits and civil rights organizations like NAN, but we will not give up hope, and we must not cease to love. It is what Dr. King would want from us, and he gave us his life to defend that principle. In his letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. King wrote about the importance of taking action and fighting for what you believe in, and he criticized those who remain cautious, more cautious than courageous, remain silent in the face of injustice. That's something that organizations like NAN exemplify, the notion that we will never sit idly by. We will go into the world and fight for what we believe in. When we see injustice, when we hear those calls to change, we will fight, standing side by side until that fight is won. That is what Reverend Sharpton has committed to today. That is what we are committed to for the next 4 years. Now, God instructs us to use our unique talents and abilities to make the world a better place, and that means putting ourselves in environments of tension. We call that good trouble. That's what Congressman John Lewis always believed in. And even when we face those enormous challenges, even when we get knocked down, we will keep going. And as your senator, I am committed to using my platform to push for meaningful change. I'll continue to fight for voting rights to ensure every voice is heard, reduce housing costs and expand access to affordable housing, fund job training programs, and create real pathways to economic opportunity and generational wealth. I will fight to end the unacceptable disparities in Black maternal health and address the absolute pandemic of gun violence that plagues our communities. These are not just policy priorities. They are our moral imperatives. In this very, very dark time of darkness, we will meet this hate with love, and we will fight for justice, decency, and equal opportunity for all. I want to thank Reverend Sharpton for his leadership and the bright light he shines every day. God bless you, Rev.
Over the past several years, we have had various state issues. None of them that we've called on have not been responded in a way that was constructive and fair. Just recently, the governor called about this brutal beating that led to death in the Marcy Correctional Facilities outside of Utica, and had those guys fired and moved forward. She was the one that stood up and said that she called me, I was out of town, said, I want to come, I'm going to announce something that I think you should be here for. I said, well, I'll send somebody. She says, well, I'm announcing a commission to study reparations. I said, I'll be on the next plane. She has that kind of courage and that kind of vision. May we welcome the governor of the state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Good morning, friends. It is such an honor to be back here again in a place that all across America symbolizes the continuation of Dr. King's movement. Where else but here, under the leadership of Reverend L. Sharpton, do we talk about our moral responsibility to others? And guess what? We don't just talk about this here. We answer some tough questions. Dr. King spoke literally 2 months before he was assassinated, February of 1968, at his beloved Ebenezer Baptist Church in Georgia. He said, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" I say the time for asking that question is over. The time to show your actions is now. And we will continue to stand together and rise up with the moral conscience of the people in this room and Dr. Reverend L. Sharpton, and thank them for all they do. Let's talk about what we can do. I have to ask a question. Are there any moms and dads out there? Any grandparents out there? How are you doing these days? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. Families are struggling. Hard-working New Yorkers and Americans are struggling all over this country. And what we have to do in government is to acknowledge that and figure out how we can answer the question, how we can lift them up and make their lives better. That is my message from Dr. King from 1968 to now, and I will continue to live that. We answered that question. And I said, as your governor, I'll make your family my fight and put more money back in your pockets to help you get through the stress of everyday life. We're going to do that, and here's how. If you have little kids, $1,000 for babies under the age of 4. Because I know as the first mom governor, it's the diapers, it's the formula. They grow out of their clothes every 3 months. Am I right about that? So these are real experiences that I've lived, and I want to help New Yorkers. Let's help the little kids. Let's help school-age kids. Anybody ever have to get reduced or free school lunch or breakfast? You know what? For kids, that's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? There's a stigma. They feel kind of bad and separated. I'm saying every child in the state of New York gets free breakfast and free lunch, so every little child can never sit in school again with their little tummies growling. I want them to learn. And you've all paid so much because of inflation, right? It wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. The cost of everything went up 20% in the last few years. State of New York took in extra money. Our comptroller can tell you that. I'm saying that's not our money, that's your money. We're putting it back in your pockets, $500 checks for families. Those are some of the initiatives in addition to a middle-class tax cut that helps me respond to the call from Dr. King to do something. Not just talk about people's problems, but to let them know there are leaders and all the elected officials who've joined me here today, extraordinary leaders who understand the pain that people are going through. And we will meet the moment of the day and the challenges that'll start on Monday. I assure you that New York will always be that beacon of hope, the place where the women's rights movement started, the place where the NAACP was founded, the place where the environmental justice movement moved forward, where we protect LGBTQ rights at Stonewall. We are the place that the nation looks to continue the movement started by Dr. King, and we will not let you down. We'll continue that fight forward. Thank you, everyone. Onward and upward.
Governor Kathy Hochul. Let me say before I bring on our next speaker, I want to recognize Rich Marco, stand up, Rich, from the Hotel Trade Council. And reason I did that, Dr. King's last battle was fighting for unions. And we want to keep that fight going. We stand with HTC. All right. We stand with HTC. 33 years ago, when I started National Action Network, I left the Slave Theater and said we're going to Harlem and form an organization more in line with Dr. King. Our attorney at the time, Michael Hardy, who this is the first King weekend I'm going through without him. I told my daughter last night, I don't know how I'm going to feel without Michael with us this King Day. But my attorney, Michael Hardy, said you're going to need 5 people to sign for the incorporation. One was a cop from Brooklyn named Eric Adams. And since those 33 years, we've had different tactics, but we always found a way to get in the back room and work a strategy that would deal with what was best for our people. If he got one side, I got another, I could always call Adrian Adams to whip him back in line. If that didn't work, I'll call Tish. None of us gonna mess with Tish. That's like my sister tell me I'm gonna call Mama. Somebody say I'm gonna call Tish. I say I yield. I got a lot of calls yesterday about the mayor going to Mar-a-Lago. And I said that my concern is Trump playing this wrong. My concern, not the mayor. Y'all didn't get concerned when he called the governor. He can talk to Hochul, he can talk to Eric. But let's not let him trick this into some way to cover some of his anti-king, hateful, biased way. Our elected officials got to talk to the president. I got to walk on the president. I know my role. But be careful of people that will manipulate and use your presence in a way that is against the interests of your people. And we should be careful not to let them turn us against each other. We love to jump on the star. I remember people said I lost weight to go on TV. I had lost weight before I went on TV. I've been on TV since I was a little boy. I was 300 pounds when I was a little boy. Then they say he started wearing nice suits because I could fit in them now. I couldn't fit. They didn't sell these kind of suits in my old size. There's always a conspiracy. So Eric called me and said, should I come this morning? I said, you come every year. And you got to come this year. I don't know what Trump did to you down there. If he did something to you, I can baptize you again. I baptize you. I might have to put you down in the water this time. The mayor of the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams.
Oh man, you know it's deja vu. Deja vu. I remember when Reverend Daughtry told the 13th of us to go into law enforcement. I was a computer geek and I wanted to go into computers, and he says no. After the Randolph Evans shootings, after the Arthur Miller choke death, after all these incidents, I need young black men to go into the police department. And in spite of what I went through as a young man at 15, being arrested and beat by police, it was traumatizing for me to think that I was going to get this directive from the man that I love and appreciated, and G2 Weusi, Sam Penn, and many of those intellectual giants that was carving the pathway that many of us are benefiting from right now. And I decided to go in. And they called me Tom, Uncle Tom. They called me Negro. They called me all sorts of names because I was following the orders. And I remember when you left the slave theater and the names that they called us when we started and carved a new path, believing in the philosophies of Dr. King. And you know, sometimes people have a retrospective appreciation for the sacrifices that you have made. There's nothing enjoyable about what I'm going through right now. There was nothing enjoyable about when I was studying to become a lieutenant and someone shot out the car windows of my car and my son was just a few months old. And I could have walked away. There was nothing enjoyable about mommy calling me and saying, son, you need to stop doing what you're doing. They're going to take your life. and they're going to target you. But when you have a clear mission that's guided by God, you don't worry about what is happening because God is in charge. God is in charge. And so as we view the life of Dr. King, don't forget what he was going through. Don't forget about him being stabbed. Don't forget about eggs being thrown at him. Don't forget about those who were demonizing him. And some of the same papers who acknowledged his birthday, go read what they were saying about Dr. King during that time and how they were treating him during that time. And go look at some of the folks who were saying the things. Who does he think he is? You know, why is he sitting down with this person? And when we lost Dr. King, he was in the midst of raising the concerns about the Vietnam War. Young black men and women going there and having to lose their life in the process. And the billions of dollars that we were wasting on that war that should have gone to the inner city. And so, in my conclusion, nothing touches me more than what my sister DA from the Bronx stated. Everyone comes up and state we need to invest more in our communities. Everyone state that we need to put funds into building out our young people. And yes, we have done that. We've had more MWB contracts awarded because of Michael Gardner in the history of this city. Yes, we dropped unemployment in black and brown communities and in all demographics. Yes, we're investing in foster care children. Yes, we are making sure we deal with dyslexia so our children don't fill our jails. I've been on Rikers Island more than any mayor in the history of this city talking to the inmates and the correction officers. Yes, we have turned around the economy. Yes, we've removed 20,000 guns off our streets so that we don't have to carve highways of death. But the point is, we should be investing in our communities. So think about this for a moment. Just as Dr. King talked about the Vietnam War, and it wasn't popular, there were folks of color who was saying, why are you talking about this national issue? Why are you not standing up and allowing the president to do what he needs to do and don't criticize the president? And Dr. King said he had a moral obligation. That's the obligation I had when we saw $6.9 billion leave our city to deal with a national migrant crisis when we should have been investing in those children and those services that we should have been investing in. It was the right thing to do. And I don't care if it's a Democrat, Republican, socialist, I don't care who's the president. I'm going to defend this city because those are your dollars that we took out of this city that we should have been spending to deal with the issues in our city. We could have taken $200 million to deal with the chronically absent children that we are missing. We could have taken $100 million to deal with our seniors, citizens that are dealing with housing. We could have taken $300 million to deal with what we're trying to do with foster care children and improving in the services that we need. They took $6.9 billion from this city, folks. $6.9 billion that we could have been investing in the programs that the district attorney was talking about. That's what I was fighting for. That's what this battle was about. I said, how dare you think you're going to take billions of dollars from a city that was suffering from COVID, and now when we should have been investing in the city, we should have been doing so. That's the spirit of Dr. King. I'm not doing this because I need a job. I'm doing this because I want to do a darn good job for the community that I stood up for years and years and years. And let me say something. Often he adorned this stage. My prayers go out to Brian Benjamin, Lieutenant Governor. Where's Brian? Lieutenant Governor, rising, had a promising career on himself. His family was traumatized. And they just announced that they dropped the charges against him. That's fine. That's fine, they dropped the charges against him. But what about his life? What about what his wife went through? What about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he had to spend in legal fees? What about the desecration of his name, the leaking of information, the same way they tape and listen to the phone calls of Dr. King to discredit him. In 2027 is a significant day for many of us, and many people don't know. In 2027, FBI must release what they did to Dr. King, and you're all going to see what we talk about when we say the politicizing of investigatory bodies. And so my heart and prayers goes out to Brian Benjamin. This young man, promising career, moving up, lieutenant governor. His career was beautiful in front of him, and we saw what happened to him. So be careful when you celebrate the desecration of people. Let's lift each other up during Dr. King's Day. I'm going to do the work, as I did that work over 30-something years ago when I became part of the board of this organization. And back then, they hurled names at us. They said things about us. But look who's still here. And those people who criticize you, look at where you are now, the largest and most important and significant civil rights leader in the history. And I don't understand why all that you have done, what is taking so long for the president to give you the Presidential Medal of Freedom? What is holding this up? Everybody that adorns this stage should be calling the White House. The president has a few more days. So I don't want to hear about what's coming. I want to hear about who's here now. Give Reverend Sharpton the Presidential Medal of Freedom before you leave this administration. He deserves it, he earned it, and he's the greatest civil rights leader of all time. Thank you very much.
Mayor Eric Adams. I don't know how you're going to top that, Scott Stringer, but we're going to give you a shot. Let me say this. As the mayor talks about dealing with the $6.9 billion that they took out of the city because of migrants and they didn't handle it right. At the same time, the civil rights side of that is we do not want unilateral breaking up of families by this incoming president. And we do not want mass deportation without some guardrails, because it is a contradiction to me to say you want to push Latinos and Haitians out, but you want to bring Greenland and Canada in. There's a racial, if we got too many Americans, then why you want to take Greenland and Canada? Is it the color of their skin? So me and Mr. Trump got a battle on policy. That's why he like to call me names. But at the same time, I agree with the mayor. We've got to not starve our cities in a way that does not have direction, but we can't violate people's rights. And he's also right. They always go after people. Tomorrow morning, I'm preaching the King's Day morning service at Abyssinia Baptist Church. And when I started, Adam Clayton Powell was my hero. They indicted Adam Clayton Powell. They indicted Martin Luther King. But the question is, and I want to tell some of y'all here, some folks come here that are being prosecuted, need to be prosecuted. Everybody ain't no political prisoner now. So don't be coming telling me, ain't this the place to get sometimes justice is locking your butt up. But we fight for what we think is right. And no one has been more gallant. I just got to clear that up, because they'll be telling me I got to make everybody a martyr. Some of y'all. Gotta go. All right. I'll leave that alone. We on the radio. We fought to get in power. I remember when Ferguson happened, Michael Brown was killed. And the family called and asked me to do the funeral. I flew out there and I did the funeral. I met with some of the young folks that had been throwing rocks. And I told them that we can't win like that. We've got to protest, but we can't become violent protesting the violence. And you got to, if you got any information, give it to these that are investigating. And they said, well, Remal, we can't talk to the man. I said, Have you looked at the Attorney General lately? We are the man. It was Eric Holder. We fought from the streets of Bed-Stuy and brought about a person to sit at the highest seat of criminal justice in the state of New York, who has fought these cases, who's been unafraid. She will go after gougers. She will go after policemen. She'll go after the former president and incoming president of the United States, because she's Bed-Stuy strong and baptized with valor and vigor. I bring you our state attorney general, Letitia James.
Bless you. Bless you. Okay, we got a lot of elected officials here. I love you, HTC. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Dr. King asked that question, talking about the radiant faith in the future, notwithstanding those who marched and were thrown in dirty jails, notwithstanding those who were hit in the heads in violence. Where do we go from here? And those individuals never gave up. They never retaliated. And it is that spirit of hope that convicts me this morning to never give in and never give up. It is that spirit of hope that shapes our future. It is that spirit of hope, knowing, as Dr. King said, that hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. It is that spirit of hope, my friends, that is my fidelity and strengthens my will. And it strengthens my will and my fidelity in the rule of law and no man, in the Constitution and no man. It is that spirit of hope in the Constitution, knowing that my faith is complete and that I will not be an idle spectator in the destruction of the dream of Dr. King, not now, not ever. And that I will not sit idly by where the rights of individuals are subverted, where individuals are oppressed, where there is a plan this morning to engage in mass deportation in Chicago. I will stand up for the rights that flow from the blood and the sweat and the tears of Dr. King and all of my ancestors who died for my right to stand at this podium this morning. So I will not resist, but I will be resolute, and I will be specific, and use the law both as a sword and as a shield. And as Dr. King said when he was accepting the Nobel Peace Prize, I believe that wounded justice, lying prostrate on the blood-flowing streets of our nation, can be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme amongst the children of men. It is that spirit of hope that keeps me going. My focus is fixed. My mission is clear. My determination is direct. I will not stop. I will not shut up. I will stand firm, knowing that the law is on our side and that justice is on our side and that Dr. King died for all of us. And to that end, my office is working each and every day to ensure that our democracy, our values, our rule of law are protected and upheld. And all of those immigrants right now who fall in my arms every day crying, concerned about being separated, concerned about being deported because they did nothing else. Those immigrants who served all of you this morning, whose names and faces you do not know, those individuals who support our economy, those individuals who work in jobs that we don't apply for, those individuals who lift up our economy, those individuals who are the backbone of our democracy, those individuals we've got to fight for every day. So don't let them use those immigrants to form a gap between you and I. Don't let them use immigrants to separate us. Don't let them use immigrants to be scapegoats, because we've been there before. And in fact, every ethnic group has been there before. Know your history. And my office has issued warnings that all must comply with state laws and regulations that enforce DEI and fairness in education and business. And I want all of you to shop at Costco. I hope all of you got your Costco cards, because they support DEI. So we've got to work together, my friends. We've got to work and act affirmatively by strengthening our alliances with other groups and other individuals. And to make sure that we know that we're all in this together. Poor whites, poor blacks, Latinos, Asians, it really doesn't matter. We're all in this together. And if we come together and form a powerful coalition in this nation, recognizing that individuals are voting against their economic interests, if they understand that the oligarchs in power are only interested in, again, providing and improving their own economic needs, if we understand that we should march together and work together and continue the dream of Dr. King, then we will be all right. I'm not worried about the next administration. Not at all. I know that God is on my side, and I know that righteousness is on my side. So I'm going to stand up each and every day and do what I've got to do, and that's protect New York and sue, baby, sue.
Give a hand, Tish James. And we, as I said, we are going to fight with her about this deportation stuff. Let us now hear from a brother beloved who is the second highest official in the city of New York, an activist. Oh, I was looking at this chair. I was getting ready to introduce you and you wasn't there. An activist extraordinaire. I've watched him grow and he's become a power that we can depend on. Let us hear from the public advocate of the city of New York, Jumaane Williams.
Peace and blessing, love and light. I'm like, I wasn't worried because I knew I wasn't next. You know what I mean? But, woo! I got to go behind Attorney General Tish James. That's crazy. She got that. I ain't even going to try to raise my voice. I'm going to be calm. What's up, Nan? House of Justice? How y'all doing? Happy King Day. Can I keep it 100 with y'all? Can I keep it a buck? Well, I got to keep it real because there's a lot of people who talk about Dr. King and really misuse his name. There's a lot of people that kind of talk about the dream and like kind of sometimes whitewash some of the things that he was saying, but Dr. King was very clear that he was worried he had integrated into a burning house. He was very concerned about that. In a couple of days, we'll see some of that going on. I think people also limit Dr. King to just diversifying and diversity. And so there are a lot of us, me included, who have been a part of many people's hard work to provide diversity in leadership. But I know that Dr. King was most interested in destroying the systems and structures that kept people back. And I don't think he would be happy of us who diversified but decided to do the foolishness we saw happening and then ask for forgiveness. That's not what he wanted. He was very clear that systems of inequity, particularly those based in economic structures, were the problem. So what is the point of having more diversity than we've ever seen, black, white, brown, women, if people still suffering? Y'all still catching hell out there. We are now fighting battles we fought 30, 40, 50 years ago. That's not what Dr. King, you might as well have kept what we had if this is what we were going to do with it. So we have leaders talking about Dr. King, but not making the changes that are necessary. We have leaders talking about Dr. King that rightfully and correctly said we have to bring the hostages home, but never mentioned we need a ceasefire in Gaza and what was happening to the Palestinians. That makes no sense. In a few days, we have someone who's going to be doing mass deportation, in their words, on a scale we have never seen. I need to remind you, in the 30s and 40s, in Germany, the first solution was mass deportation. It was not the last solution. I need y'all to understand that. So I want to keep my job. I just want to be clear. But do not confuse black, brown persons doing better with black and brown people doing better. It is two different things. And we have leaders using the melanation in their skin as both a sword and a shield to do things that are harmful for us. On King Day, we have to be clear what King's purpose was. Before I get off, I got to keep it a little more real, if that's okay. Everybody say 6.9 billion. Now say God is love. Say 6.9 billion. God is love. There are people who want to use righteous anger for political purposes. Now, I want to be clear with you because I'm talking from me. Sometimes I get angry too with the wrong people, and I have to take a step back and make sure I'm directing that angry well. To my long-time New Yorkers, particularly black and brown folks who did not and still have not gotten what you were supposed to get. How many people are angry about that? Stay angry about that. But make sure you're angry at the right people. The next time people tell you, I had $6.9 billion I had to spend on them, not because of you, ask them, why didn't you spend it on me then when you had it? We have always had that money if leaders believed that what we were going through were a crisis. We have always had that $6.9 billion to house people who have been begging for housing. We have always had that $6.9 billion to take care of the folks who are sleeping in the streets and are buying for mental health services. We have always had that money. Do not allow the people who do not help us spend that money on long-term New Yorkers, blame it on people who never made that decision. Those people did not make that decision. Leaders did. So stay angry. Think about Dr. King and aim your anger at the people who have caused you harm. Not the people who are also trying to follow Doctor's dreams of equity and living up their lives to the best of their possibility. How many Caribbean people in the house? Caribbean descent. Some of us have overstayed our visa a little bit. Some of us came to school a long time ago and we're still here. Don't forget our stories. Don't allow people to divide us unnecessarily and use Dr. King to do that. $6.9 billion, well, why didn't you spend it on us then? Because we had it, and we still have a budget that is without deficit coming up next year. Please be very careful. And I understand your anger, I really do, because I feel it too. But be careful where you cut off the mark of who deserves, because other people's mark is us. The mark ain't the same for everybody. I am begging you, We got a rough, people say 4 years, Rev. I think we need a 2-year plan, but that's another story. We got a rough couple years coming up. Don't allow anyone of their color to divide us. And I'm going to take this from Comptroller Brad Lander because I heard this from him, what they've been saying in Brazil. No one let go of anyone's hands. I'm begging you. That is the only way we're going to get through this. We have more black, brown women leadership than we have ever had. And we're still catching it. Please, keep your anger where it belongs. And I'm going to be clear. We have had a problem, and I believe, and this is me, the White House did fail us. I believe Albany failed us. I'm going to be clear about that. There's a lot of things we could have been doing. There's some things we should have been doing ourselves as well. But never let that forget about our humanity, what we believe. God is love. Dr. King is love. On King Day, do not let go of anyone's hands and don't let anyone separate us. That is the only way we're going to get through. Peace and blessing, love and light to you all.
Public Advocate Jamani Williams. Let us hear now from a man who's a member of this organization, who's been with us before and since. He's become a national symbol for justice and fairness. And we know that they're going to mess with him, so we're going to mess with them. The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg.
Our public advocate said it was tough to go after our attorney general. I have to go after the attorney general and the public advocate. I thought Rev loved me. Good morning, Nan. Good morning. Happy King Weekend. This is a place I love to come every year to celebrate Dr. King, because first and foremost, Dr. King was a Baptist preacher whose movement was rooted in the Word. Focused on the book of Matthew. Right? Feed the hungry. Clothe the naked. Heal the sick. And that's what Reverend Sharpton has been doing, another prophetic voice in the wilderness, shouting out for social justice for as long as I've been alive. So thank you, Rev. And thanks to all that Nan does. I want to just focus on one specific piece of Dr. King's legacy that I think is really salient today that gets overlooked, and it also intersects with the beautiful village of Harlem, and that's mental health. I was here last year talking about this in the 50s when Dr. King was here for his book signing. He was stabbed inches from his heart, rushed to Harlem Hospital, and actually a Nan member's father performed a surgery that saved his life. They said if he'd have sneezed, he would have died. And when Dr. King learned that the woman who stabbed him was schizophrenic, he didn't say throw her away. He didn't call her names. He talked back in the 50s about the need for mental health care. And as your district attorney here in Manhattan, I invite all y'all to come down to criminal court in Manhattan. You will see the brokenness of our healthcare system before your eyes. So on this King Day, I just want to simply say we've got to remember the folks with mental health issues. We do not talk about this issue enough in our communities. Dr. King was talking about it in the 50s. We have to resurrect that conversation. We're doing it every single day in the district attorney's office. We've got navigators focused and centered right in our arraignment parts. When people leave, they say, what do you need? Do you need treatment? Do you need service? They can take you right from courthouse to transitional housing with wraparound services. We need to invest more in that. We have navigators out in all of our neighborhoods. Same thing, this kind of a cold day with someone who's talking to him or herself with no shirt on. Rightfully, many of us are going to cross the street. We've got people in the DA's office who we've retained crossing the street to engage with those people, to talk to them, ask them if they need a cup of coffee, to connect them with services. That is the kind of humane, data-driven safety net that Dr. King was talking about. So I don't have a whole lot of broad strokes. I just want us to focus on that one issue as we go forth together. And
Yes, yes, it's something we need to talk about more in our community. And as we celebrate Dr. King, never, ever, ever divorce him from what he was, a Baptist preacher focused on the word. Thank you.
D.A. Alvin Bragg. And he's also a Sunday school teacher at Abyssinia. I'll be preaching there in the morning. I wish I could get one person who, you know, we have a speaker. Come on in, the First Lady of the state of New Jersey. Give a hand to our First Lady from New Jersey. I wish that I could have somebody sing before I speak tomorrow at Abyssinia, because she's one of the best singers in town. But y'all know her because she's also one of the best orators and the best speaker in the 50 states of the United States. Our Speaker of the New York City Council, Adrian Adams.
God's been good to me. He's been so good to me. Better than this world could ever be. He's been so good to me. He dried my tears away and turned my midnights into day. So I say, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I won't complain. Now, you all know only Reverend Sharpton could. I was not going to do that. But I know a hint when I hear one. And so I am obedient to the angel of this house, the Reverend Dr. Alfred Sharpton. Good morning, NAN family. You know, as a life member of NAN, I never miss the Saturday Action Rally. Even if I'm not here in person, I am certainly with you virtually. So I just have one question. Where's Tony? Tony, my brother. I told you I was a member of the NAN family, right, Tony? You take a lot from Rev. I don't know how you do it, brother, but hi, Tony. So we thank Reverend Sharpton for convening us once again on this amazing day. Today's 10th annual MLK Day of Service. Today, Martin Luther King Day in celebration. The core values that Dr. King championed and sought to advance throughout his life must continue to guide us, especially now with the start of this new but old presidential administration. Everything old is new again, brothers and sisters, but this is new 2.0 octane high-level nonsense. So we have work to do, continued work to do. The work starts here on the local level where we can fortify our values and New Yorkers' rights, strengthen our democracy, and deliver a more just and equitable future. 3 years ago, I was proud to be elected as the first Black Speaker of the New York City Council, leading our historic women majority City Council and the most diverse City Council in the history of the city of New York. We've taken a lot of hits.
I wasn't going to call this out, but let me just call out misogyny. Mean Mr. Misogyny. One of these days, we are going to have a serious talk about misogyny. Because some of the things that you've seen and some of the things that you've heard are not true. I can attest to that, as can Vice President Kamala Harris. We have lived and are living through the of misogyny. It is abusive. It is subtle, and sometimes it comes wrapped up in a nice, beautiful package. This is not in my book, but this is in my spirit. And so as we move forward as strong women, particularly women of color, in this world of leadership, yes, we get blamed for stuff that our names aren't even stamped onto. Our bodies get stamped onto in leadership that we've had no hand in dealing any card. That is because of Mr. Misogyny. I don't like him either, Jamani. But we gotta call him out. We have to face the facts. There is legislation that's been put forth by the city council that's been demonized by other places in leadership. And let me tell you that one of the strongest pieces of legislation was done for the Eric Garners of the world, where his mother typically sits here next to our Reverend Sharpton. It was not done to bog down the NYPD in paperwork, because no, the city council, I'm positive, Jamani, the city council does not legislate the management of the New York City Police Department. And so the misinformation that was put out there, and some of you in this room might have even believed that, I am here to call out Mr. Misogyny for promoting dysfunction, discourse, and disconnection among the people of the city of New York. Legislation that we put forth as mothers and grandmothers, as myself, the first wife, mother, and grandmother of 11 grandchildren, putting forth legislation that is going to ensure the life and health of my grandsons, some of whom my own relatives have been on the force. Why would I elect? Why would I choose? Why would I legislate to harm them? Makes no sense, Reverend Sharpton. Oh, but Mr. Misogyny told you all something different. Mr. Misogyny was so strong that they came out and put forth measures on the ballot last election season where the language was so beautiful, it was so fluffy, it was so wrapped up in that bow that I talked about that some of you believe that language. Oh, but what most of you in New York City voted for was the elimination of the strength of your city council membership. Stuff that will defortify your voices at City Hall. What a shame. What a shame. What a shame that Mr. Misogyny was able to promote such ill will towards the people of the city of New York. But you know what? They still say that when there's a mess, a black woman's gotta clean it up. And so for my last and my grand finale in the city council, I will continue to be that cleanup woman that Betty Wright spoke about when I was growing up. The cleanup woman. I'm not going to use Sister Betty's lyrics because we know they went someplace else and we're not about to go there. But this cleanup woman will continue to prioritize the people of the city of New York with a women majority city council, who will continue to be clean up women and the men who get it, Yusuf. On the strength of Dr. King, in whose lives we have built our strength and whose shoulders we stood on the heels of our state leaders who have taken action to create a reparations commission that we support 1,000%. On the heels of creating, as a New York City Council, the very first ever Black Studies curriculum for New York City's public schools. The cleanup woman was responsible for that. Another top priority for the council, and especially for me, as was mentioned before, is confronting the public health emergency of Black maternal mortality. And as Dr. King once said, all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and inhumane. Across the nation, there continues to be health inequities that unnecessarily threaten lives. Far too many Black women suffer preventable, life-threatening complications during pregnancy and childbirth that cost them their lives. And somehow, I haven't quite figured out how, but somehow I know Mr. Misogyny is responsible for that too. And so the cleanup women are going to have to start getting serious about cleaning that up for our Black mothers. We've made this a priority in the City Council. We're going to continue in the tradition of Dr. King to do our work. As we continue our celebration of Dr. King's legacy, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that his dream of strength, he didn't just sit there and out of his window and just dream a dream. He dreamt of strength for his people, of equality for the nation. Dr. King dreamt of all of us in this room standing on his strength. All of us deserve to lead healthy and dignified lives. And we owe it to ourselves and to each other to fight for a world where this is possible. And you know what? This is within reach. But have no fear, make no mistake about it, as this City Council continues to do the great work and still get blamed for things that we have not stamped. Have faith, Councilmember Hudson, Councilmember Krishnan, Councilmember Salam, Councilmember Abreu, Finance Chair Brannon. I see all of you, and I am so blessed to partner with you over these years. It is the grand finale of this cleanup woman, but together we are going to continue to sweep out hate, to sweep out inequity, to sweep out injustice, to sweep out lies, and so help me God, to help sweep out Mr. Misogyny.
Adrian Adams. And let me say, as Adrian's been a member of this organization, and I called her and said, there are rumors she may run for something else. She said, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. But whatever she do, we're gonna be there with her, because she always been there with us. On Wednesday, we had our annual Martin Luther King breakfast in D.C. And the surprise we had is Vice President Kamala Harris came and spoke for Martin III night. And Kamala Harris faced the same thing that Adrian faced, the misogyny of some Black men that would not support and do the right thing. If she had not been a Black woman, Trump only won by 1.5% of the vote. Y'all act like it was a mandate. It was a man, but it wasn't a mandate. And that's what she suffered. I want her to know we're with her. And I know we're still going, we're live. So I want Reverend Marshall to bring on some of the City Council. But before I do that, I want to bring two people up that First of all, I don't know why Crystal Hudson's sitting in the audience. I told you, she's my buddy there. Come on. The people, I told Crystal that when you are very progressive and unapologetic, they kick you to the side. I've been there, and I know that. A lot of people that, be accepting and invite me places now with folks that used to talk about me like a dog. So I always said that if I ever get in a position, I'm going to embrace those that y'all think is crazy because y'all thought I was crazy. And so Crystal represents our future in this city and our present. And a lot of the progressive caucus, you need new vision, new energy that will challenge you because it's all one movement. I will never forget, Stokely Carmichael told me, Adrian, that he said, you with Dr. King's movement, he was about 14, 15 years older than me. He's Jesse's age. He said, the thing I always respected about Dr. King is no matter how many times we call him names and say the old God, and Dr. King was killed when he was 39. He never got to be old. He said Dr. King would listen to us and bring us in. And some of y'all are too insecure to get old that you don't want to listen to people. And if they're wrong, you can reason with them, but hear them like you wanted to be heard. And that's why I want her to always, when she come up front, if there ain't a seat for you up here, say, move over, Negro. Rev Mal told me I belong up here. Before I bring on and I want to hear from Mark Levine, our board president, because he fought to make sure National Action Network kept a home here. This is a direct person. Mark Levine went in rooms that he didn't know I knew he was in, standing up for us. And I'm going to hear from him, but I recognized Rich, and come up, Rich, from Hotel Trade Council. I want you to have something to say for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, District Attorney Bragg complained that he had to follow Attorney General James. Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow Speaker Adams, and I'm not going to even try to sing. So let me just start by saying good morning. Look, my name is Rich Morocco. I'm the president of the Hotel Trades Council, the union that represents 40,000 hotel and hospitality workers across the city. And it is really an honor to be here today, and I am deeply humbled and grateful to Reverend Sharpton for giving me the opportunity to attend this incredible event honoring the legacy of Dr. King. Because his legacies and his values still guide the larger labor movement to this day. And they guide our union, and they guide our membership, and they guide me personally. Because as we all know, Dr. King was a fierce advocate and a tireless defender of labor unions representing workers of all stripes across the country. He showed us that joining together to fight for the betterment of working people was a moral issue and a moral imperative. He famously taught that, I'm going to get this right, no work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance. And he taught that the labor movement was the principal force that uplifts humanity with dignity and importance. Uplifts the principal force. I knew I'd mess up that quote. That's why I wrote it down, still messed it up. I'm going to start again on that. The labor movement was the principal force that transformed misery and despair into hope and progress, because in his word, it was labor's bold struggles to achieve economic and social reform that, quote, meant not mere survival, but a tolerable life. Now, my organization, the Hotel Trades Council, all our staff, all our activist members, we fight every single day to try to uphold that legacy and that teaching. We fight every day for workers. We fight for their wages. We fight for their benefits. We fight for their health care. We fight for their ability to afford to live in the city so that they are not merely surviving, but they can continue to live in this great city that is made all the greater because of them. And look, we're in for a hell of a fight, pardon my language, because next year, our citywide contract, which covers tens of thousands of hotel workers working for hundreds of hotels, expires. And it will be my union's task, and it will be my duty to fight to make sure that we win a contract that ensures that our members earn enough to be able to support their families, to go to see the doctor when they're sick, to be treated with dignity and respect while at work, and after they punch out, to be able to afford to continue to live in this city and raise their families here. But it's not going to be an easy task, not by a long shot. It is going to be a fight. And there's a reason why in the labor movement, like in the civil rights movement, we use powerful words like fight and struggle when we describe our work, right? Because it's not just a matter of hard work. It's a matter of standing up against powerful forces that have significant resources that they're going to spend to keep us from achieving our goals. Now, in our case, we have some real challenges to overcome. We're facing exactly those types of powerful forces, from multinational conglomerates to billionaire hotel owners, who would prefer to have workers continue to work with poverty wages, doing back-breaking work. And they have already begun to marshal their resources against us. In fact, they spent millions of dollars just last year fighting quite unsuccessfully, thank you to the speaker, thank you to the mayor, thank you to the city council members, fighting unsuccessfully to block legislation that would give hotel workers just basic rights. And if they think they can do the same in our contract fight, they will. Look, and on top of that, hotel industry, we have to contend now with Airbnb, a multi-billion-dollar tech company that's pushing to convert residential housing in New York City into hotel rooms, putting hardworking New Yorkers out of jobs and onto the street. And while that is a real threat against hotel workers, it also threatens to reduce the housing availability and increase the housing costs in neighborhoods across our city when we are already in the midst of an unprecedented affordability crisis in housing in our city. Look, while I describe all of these challenges as fights and struggles, I am heartened that we are never fighting alone. Because when we fight, we're joining forces together across neighborhoods, across organizations, across communities, with leadership like the Reverend. And I would just like to close with this. Dr. King spoke on at least 2 separate occasions in our union's auditorium. And on one of those occasions, in 1957, he described his vision that we will be able to build right here in America a nation where all men will live together as brothers, a nation where all men will respect the dignity and worth of all human persons, a nation where men will no longer take necessities from the masses to give luxury to the classes. His words are as inspirational today as they were 70 years ago when he said them in our union hall, and they continue to guide us now just as they did then. So in the spirit of that vision, that's why I'm here today, and I'd like to express my sincere gratitude, my heartfelt appreciation to Reverend Sharpton, to everybody associated with the National Action Network for your leadership in this event, for the march, and for everything you do every day. Thank you so much.
Give a hand to Rick. And we are going to support them. Dr. King's last drive was in Memphis with a labor union, and we're going to be with HTC. Before I turn it over to Stephen and he'll bring on the Assemblyman Jordan and others, and as I said, Crystal, I want us to hear from the borough president of Manhattan, and then I'm going to bring on the First Lady of New Jersey and turn it over to Reverend Stephen Marshall. Give a hand, Mark Levine.
Good morning, Nan. Good morning, HTC. I'm bringing you with me to every speech I ever give. That's very good. I have to say, Reverend Sharpton, as someone who watches you on TV every morning, I can say you are by far the best dressed and fittest man on the Morning Joe cast. With all due respect to Willie Geist. You earned that. On a more serious note, I have to say it's quite jarring to be here today. I keep looking left, and we're missing Michael Hardy, Attorney Michael Hardy. He was my friend. I know all of you are feeling this loss today. And among his many, many talents, he had the ability to cut a speaker off without hurting their feelings. And in his honor, I will try and be brief today. But on a brighter note, I have some intelligence that this week we are celebrating the 40th birthday of Minister Stephen Marshall. Is that correct? Please join me in wishing Minister Marshall a happy birthday. Very, very good. It's very meaningful to me that I occupy an office, Manhattan Borough President, where I've had no fewer than 6 African-American predecessors, every one of whom was a giant in New York politics, a trailblazer, every one of whom was impacted by the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Beginning with Hewlin Jack, let's see if any of you remember this, elected in 1953, first black borough president in New York City history. At the time, the highest ranking black elected official in America, also the highest ranking West Indian elected official in America, born in St. Lucia. Yes, indeed. Is there anyone from St. Lucia actually in this room right now? Okay, well, very good. That's it's a very good legacy. Borough President Edward Douglas, who prior to being elected was the first black U.S. ambassador in American history, served in Liberia. There was the great Constance Baker Motley, who as a young lawyer wrote the legal brief for Brown versus Board of Education. And then in 1960, when Dr. King was in prison, she got him out of a jail in Atlanta, went on to become Manhattan Borough President, and then the first black woman in the New York State Senate, right here in Harlem. And as if all that wasn't enough, she was the first black woman to be a United States attorney. Give it up for Constance Baker Motley. I'm an underachiever compared to her. The great Percy Sutton, one of the icons from here in Harlem, a trailblazer in business, in civil rights, in politics, famously served as the attorney to Malcolm X, founded the first scholarship program in New York City for black and brown college students, the SEED program, still going today. And his granddaughter, Keisha Sutton James, a daughter of the movement, is now the Manhattan Deputy Borough President. She's here with us today. Where's Keisha? There you are. Give it up for Keisha Sutton James. David Dinkins, before he was mayor, served as Manhattan Borough President, lived right up the hill at River Terrace. He created the first MWBE program for New York City. C. Virginia Fields from Birmingham, Alabama, marched with King, landed in jail for 6 days, and went on to become an incredible leader for this city. This is an incredible legacy of leaders, and it is under threat now as we head to the inauguration of a man who has promised us he will undo protections earned by these leaders and people in this room to protect black people and people of color and marginalized people in education, in housing, in the workforce, in business, in government contracting. This is a man who has told us he wants to make America great again. Again, why does he use that word? What is the era he wants to take us back to? Is it the era when C. Virginia Fields was locked up for daring to march for civil rights? Is that what he wants to take us back to? Is it the era when Constance Baker Motley had to go to the Supreme Court to petition for ending school segregation? No. No way. As Kamala Harris said, and I know you remember this, she taught us this in the campaign. Say it with me now. We are not going back. We are not going back. And we lost this election. That is painful. We are not going to stop fighting. And I heard the Reverend give a speech 2 weeks ago at the Clergy Coalition breakfast in Brooklyn. I don't know if there was a recording because it was one of the best speeches I've ever heard you give, Rev. And you said very honestly, you don't exactly have the roadmap for how we're going to fight what's coming. But we have examples that point us the way. We have the examples of Percy Sutton and Constance Baker Motley and Reverend Al Sharpton and Michael Hardy, and yes, on this weekend, MLK Jr. I don't believe in coincidences. I think the universe wanted this inauguration to be on MLK Day, to remind us, to remind the world of his example, of his words, of his morals at a moment when we need it most. That gives me faith to go forward. Thank you, Nan. Happy MLK Day. Thank you.
Let us welcome the First Lady of the state of New Jersey come to represent Governor of New Jersey. Give her a hand as she comes. That First Lady Murphy.
Good morning, everyone. Reverend Sharpton, thank you so much for welcoming me here today, for your absolutely incredible leadership of the National Action Network and all that this organization does to bring us closer to the ideals this nation was built on: equality and opportunity for all. I also want to give a big shout out to Pastor Steffi Bartley, a dear friend and Northeast Regional Director for NAN, and to each of the Reverend and the Pastor, alongside all of you good people who are here today. My husband, Governor Murphy, asked that I send his personal regards. I am honored to be with you all today and to reflect on Dr. King's legacy and our shared duty to make the vision he spoke about in his I Have a Dream speech a reality for the United States of America. As some of you may know, and I'm not sure if Council Member Adams knew, but across the river in New Jersey, we have been hard at work combating our state's maternal health crisis. And that crisis is not contained within our state lines. As the wealthiest country in the world, the United States of America should be at the cutting edge of maternal health care. Every mother and baby across our nation should begin their life together in health, wellness, and joy. But tragically and astonishingly, that is not the case. In fact, the United States has a maternal mortality rate more than double other high-income countries like Norway and Germany. We're 56th in the world, just in case you're wondering. And sadly, it will likely come as no surprise to any of you to learn that Black mothers and babies all across the nation bear the brunt of this burden. In fact, when we began our work 7 years ago, a Black mother was nearly 7 times more likely than a white mother to die from maternity-related complications here in the United States. A Hispanic mother was 3.5 times as likely. A Black baby was over 3 times more likely than a white baby to die before his or her first birthday. Hispanic baby 1.5 times. Dr. King once delivered a sermon on Mother's Day. In it, he advised mothers of color to do 3 beautiful and essential things: teach their children self-respect, urge them to be the very best they can be, and to recognize love as the only solution to humanity's problems. In that same sermon, however, Dr. King also pointed out that mothers of color were called to teach the lessons despite certain practical problems. I believe those practical problems are the very same ones at the heart of our maternal health crisis and are the direct result of systemic racism. There can be no question that mothers need a wide range of support to ensure their families are thriving. They need safe housing, reliable transportation, nutritious food, good schools, excellent childcare, consistent employment, and so very much more. But sadly, shamefully, and reprehensibly, our nation's legacy of racism has prevented Black mothers and babies from accessing these essential experiences for generations. This has to change. And over the past 7 years, through Nurture NJ, we have been working hard to see that change come to fruition. Some of our landmark achievements include becoming the second state to expand Medicaid coverage for 365 days postpartum, developing our maternal and infant health strategic plan, becoming the third state in the nation to ensure Medicaid coverage for doula care, developing a universal, statewide nurse home visiting program for all new mothers, and establishing the New Jersey Maternal and Infant Health Innovation Authority, a first-of-its-kind government authority dedicated solely to maternal and infant health, and the list goes on. And I'm thrilled to share that in his State of the State address just this past Tuesday, my husband announced our proposal to ensure fully paid parental leave for all state workers. If we're aiming to make New Jersey the safest and most equitable state in the country to deliver and raise a baby, it seems to me that by reducing a new parent's paycheck at the exact time when they will most definitely have increased expenses is the opposite of what we should be doing. And using up all of someone's sick and vacation time to stay at home to bond with a new baby is a recipe for disaster if, God forbid, something should happen and that employee or that child becomes ill. I'm incredibly proud to see our state supporting working mothers and families in general, and I'm hopeful that the state government will serve as a model so that parents working in every industry are able to take that sacred time together and build a firm foundation for their families. Thanks to these groundbreaking policies and our countless partners across the state and nation, including NAN, I have to say, and HTC, I am pleased to report we are beginning to make significant progress, including in our rankings. Over the past 7 years, we have moved nationally from an abysmal 47th to 28th for maternal mortality. From 5th to 2nd for infant mortality, and from 6th to 1st for neonatal mortality. In just the last year alone, we have moved from 36th to 25th for breastfeeding and 32nd to 18th for severe maternal morbidity. But we will not stop until we are the first. In his The Other America speech, Dr. King said that his work for economic equity was to ensure that all children grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. I believe that vision must include the opportunity to simply be healthy. And that is what our work is all about. So together, step by step, program by program, budget by budget, piece of legislation by piece of legislation, we will get there. We will make New Jersey the safest and most equitable state in the nation to deliver and raise a baby, and we will share everything we learn with the rest of the nation so that every mother and baby can begin their life together in health and joy. I thank you for what you're doing. Go get them this week in Washington.
Give a hand to First Lady. I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Marshall before I do, because I want to hear from the state reps. I've got to do a MSNBC hit, and I'll be back out. But before I do, how many of y'all know we have buses going to Washington? All right. And many of you are going with us. Good, because now I need to raise the offering so you can pay for the bus. So as they load up the council, come on, let me raise our morning offering. Hello? I don't see nobody moving. I want everybody to give to the best of your ability. You that come every Saturday morning, know I'm going to raise your. Now y'all can move the mics out the way. I need everybody to give. Reverend, bring up all of our city council, state assembly. Assemblyman Jordan is at home, so he go first. Or whatever Crystal say. I need everybody to give to the best of your ability. I need about 10 people. I got to pay for these buses. I'm not charging people to ride to Washington. I need about 10 people that can give $100 or more to come first, come quickly. Odessa Gray, $100. Louis Papa, $150. Michael Gardner, $100. Brother Winston Gilchrist, $100. Our attorney, Wiley Stecklow, $100. Jesse Fields, $200. Councilman Yusef Salam, one of the Central Park exonerated 5, $100. Corey Weiss, the other one of the Central Park exonerated 5, $100. Jamie Bland, head of Jersey City National Action Network, Patterson, New Jersey National Action Network, $100. When y'all look down, I can't hear up here. Rachel Nordlinger, $100. Diane Dunbar, $100. Jennifer Jones Austin, vice chairman of our board, saying our board is giving $1,000. Dawn Jones, $105. Come on, 50, 50, 50. I ain't talking about the rapper. I'm talking about some money. 50. Mr. Roberts, $50. Carolyn, $50. Paul Prasad, $50. Assemblyman Day, $50. Chris Ford, $50. Sandra Mitchell, $50. 20s, 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 come on. Peggy Pacou, $50. Councilwoman, give her a name, handle on that name. Crystal Hudson, $50. Come on, come on. 20s, 20s, 20s. Now everybody, whatever you have, $1, $5, a nickel, a penny, come on. Come on, Tony, with your penny. Raising offering is serious. All right, we're still live on our webpage and on YouTube. We got thousands watching. All right, thank you. Before I bring Reverend Stephen Marshall, our liaison, on to bring in our officials, I want y'all to help me celebrate. As announced, Reverend Marshall turned 40. Chris Ford had a birthday. And Come on up, Chris. And Michael Gardner had a birthday. Come on, will y'all celebrate with me? Come on. Everybody with a January birthday, come on up. Come on, come on, come on. If you born in January. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. If you're born in January, come on. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Damon. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. All right. Give him a big hand. All right. Thank y'all and happy birthday. I want Reverend to stay here. He started in Nan when he was 11 years old, and we celebrated his 40th birthday last night. And I want him to narrate this last half hour on, we're still on our tour all over. I want us, then I'm gonna do this quick hit on MSNBC for King Day weekend, and then I'll be back out. But I want us to hear, shh, these legislators and council members and members of the Assembly. Reverend Stephen Marshall.
Good morning, National Action Network. We appreciate your presence here today. We want to keep this train moving. We're going to start right here in home. For the newly elected, he's a rookie in the state legislature. We want to hear from our brother, Assemblyman Jordan Wright.
Thank you so much, National Action Network. Good morning. Good morning, Jordan. Very happy to be here. As the Rev said, I'm home. I'm home right now. For many years, I would come here, Thanksgivings, Christmases, any Saturday, just to come say hello and be a part of this movement. And it really means a lot to me. For the first time to be here right now as a state elected official representing the 70th Assembly District here in Harlem, my home. The legacy of Dr. King means a lot to me for a number of reasons. I learned about him in school. You know, I never got a chance to be on this earth with him, but it means a lot to me to learn about him each day. And I try to take one lesson every time that a Martin Luther King Day goes by. Legacy is really important to me these days. The legacy of Dr. King lives through a number of folks, namely my grandfather, Judge Bruce Wright, otherwise known as Cut 'em Loose Bruce, who was a titan for the 8th Amendment here in the city of New York, absolutely. My grandmother, who was a district public school teacher, PS 197, Constance Wright, she was assistant principal, math teacher. And my father, Assemblyman Keith Wright, who had the seat before I had, and it means a lot to me to represent in his legacy. And then for myself, I'm now the elected representative, and it means a lot to me to be here in this space. I'm serving on many committees: aging, banks, economic development, racing and wagering, transportation, and I plan on taking the legacy of Dr. King into each and every one of those to make sure that my people in my district are being served efficiently and appropriately. Once again, my name is Jordan Wright, Assembly Member for the 70th District. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Wright. We want to move forward for the Fighting Council member from Brooklyn, our sister Crystal Hudson.
Okay, can you see me over the podium? Just want to make sure it is clear, so that's always helpful. My name is Crystal Hudson. Before I get into my formal remarks, I want to say that I'd like to be associated with the remarks of the Attorney General Tish James, who held the seat before I did in the New York City Council in District 35 in Brooklyn, and also with the remarks of my speaker, Adrienne Adam, who's my Spelman sister, and she talked about Mr. Misogyny, but I want to say that it was one of our other Spelman sisters who coined the term misogynoir, and that is specifically to address the discrimination that Black women face. And I won't even get into what it is if you're Black, female, and gay. Over the last month, I've spoken with many about the irony of Trump's inauguration falling on King Day. However, I don't believe it's an accident, as Mark Levine mentioned. It's an opportunity to remind us to keep fighting as we prepare to enter a presidential administration that does not give equal value to every life and where human rights are up for debate. On Monday in Washington, D.C., a president will be sworn in who plans to destroy, tear down, annihilate, and restrict rights for communities like ours across the country. A president who's made his intentions clear to undo long-standing protections of vulnerable communities. In 2 days, we'll have a president who stands in staunch opposition to reproductive rights, immigrant rights, LGBTQ rights, and racial equity, just to name a few. A president who boasts about mass deportations and promises censorship of indigenous history, black history, systemic oppression, and the like. A president who plans to limit voting rights and criminalize trans people, those who love them, and the institutions that support them. Meanwhile, the National Action Network and Rev. Al Sharpton will lead a march on Washington. As change makers, you will gather in community, marching in solidarity, reflecting on the rich legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose ideals stand in stark contrast with those of the incoming president and his right-wing MAGA extremists. Reverend Al Sharpton recently said, and I quote, "If I was between a rock and a hard place and the only one that could deliver me is Donald Trump, I would be preparing for my goodbye." The good news is that Trump will not deliver us. We will deliver ourselves. So when people ask me what gives me hope as we look ahead to the next 4 years, this is what gives me hope. You are who gives me hope. And let Dr. King's legacy remind us we've been here before. The Reverend has been here before, but we fought and we survived together. May we be inspired by his legacy and that of Dr. King's to enter the uncertain years ahead with the courage to be bold, compassionate in the face of hate, and ever disruptive in our continued struggle for freedom. Thank you.
Let's go to Brooklyn real quick to a fighting sister who started out as a community organizer, activist, anti-violence advocate, our sister, beloved Assemblywoman Monique Chandler Waterman.
Thank you. God is good. And all the time. I'm New York State Assembly Member Monique Chandler Waterman, hailing from Brooklyn, covering East Flatbush, parts of Canarsie, Brownsville, and Crown Heights. I am blessed to be here today. I'm proud to be a member of the newly formed Black Task Force of the New York State Assembly, where I co-chair as a on the Mental Health Committee, and a member of the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Asian Caucus, where I'm a co-chair of the Anti-Gun Violence Subcommittee. I'm thrilled to stand here before you today to commemorate someone who has remained a pivotal figure in our history and has inspired generations of leaders through his unwavering commitment to justice, peace, and equality, equity, education equity, justice reform, criminal justice reform, I should say, voter engagement, anti-violence, and economic empowerment. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you to Nan. Thank you so much to the family here. Thank you to the leadership of our Reverend Al Sharpton. And we considering the many things that happen today politically in Washington, D.C. that may serve as a polarizing for this country, especially on Monday, we are choosing today to spend highlighting real change and action for our communities, which holds much more significance. When I think of the late Dr. King, a few things come to mind: peace, unity, action, diversity, equity, and inclusion. These attributes are needed in a much deeper way that one can imagine for a nation at this very moment. There is still hope because we are standing here. Dr. King, we are still working out some of the dreams. We finally got the New York City Public Black Studies curriculum for the first time. Shout out to BU and Speaker Adrian Adams. His body of work has greatly influenced the work that we carry out closely with community leaders. I have an in-district 8058 Public Safety Task Force, in a multitude of ways, through nonviolence and peace, has influenced so much of the work that we do on the grounds in our communities, our schools, our cities, and nation. So his message of nonviolence lend us to continue the work we carry out against fighting gun violence, promoting peace, and working collaboratively to get to that point. So unfortunately, there's been an uptick of gun violence. 488 mass shootings since 2024, and on the first day in 2025, we had a mass shooting in Queens. With 10 people was injured, we convened a meeting to talk on the federal, state, and city level to make sure we streamline communications as we activated the crisis management teams on the ground to help out those communities impacted. We reintroduced the legislation, defined the term of mass shooting, including the word injured. 4 or more being murdered or injured is a mass shooting. Don't matter if you upstate, downstate, we need those federal dollars to come to our community as they are traumatized. We're continuing this work. Yes, we could clap it up for that. As we continue this work, I've introduced legislation to protect the intent of the New York State Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Do we know that we're losing the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention? Don't matter who's in office, we need to make sure that office stays. We need to properly fund those groups in real time with procurement process and technical assistance. That's what the intent of that office will do. And make sure we do expansive work. So amidst of all the work we continue to carry on a daily basis as I close, and as Dr. King has always said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So as we stand on the shoulders of Robert Brooks and in a state correction facility as he was murdered, we need to make sure every single person that watched, that helped, that did the crime is able to be prosecuted and shut down Marcy Correctional Facility. So I end with this. I've introduced in legislation carries law. If you see something, it's your duty as an officer. You took that oath to do something. If not, you are charged with the same crime as somebody that did it, or you watch it. And we will continue expanding that for correctional officers and everyone that is there to take the oaths. So as I close, this is not an I thing, this is a we thing. No matter who's in office, God is in charge. That's the ultimate president who leads us. And we are here together as black leaders with my colleagues to make sure we do the right thing. Thank you so much. Love you. New York State Assembly Member Monique Chandler Waterman.
Let me, before Reverend brings on our next elected speaker, I thought they had spoke. I must bring on one of the real heroes of criminal justice reform and proper execution in this state. I thought he had already spoke. I want y'all to give a hand to my homeboy, the Brooklyn District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez.
Good morning, House of Justice. It's an honor and privilege to be here. I want to just, before I jump into my remarks, thank Reverend Sharpton for convening us once again. You know, we have the privilege under his leadership to hear from all of the leaders in our community, and we can't take that for granted. So, Reverend Sharpton, thank you for continuing to fight for social justice for everyone, understanding that we have a living legend among us, and I know we talk about it, but one day this state and more should give him his flowers while he's alive and well, and I am so grateful. You know, I'm just really, Reverend, I want you to understand this. During the George Floyd protest, I have 3 young boys, and you know, there was a lot going on, and I pulled Reverend aside and I said, it would mean a lot for me if you take a photo of my sons. That photo hangs in my house. I want you to know that you're an inspiration, not just to the folks that come here every Saturday, but for people that you never understand, look up to your leadership. So thank God that we still have Reverend Sharpton leading us here. As we reflect on another year of progress and challenges, the lesson Dr. King left us feels as urgent as ever. And Dr. King said once, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Those words, that need for hope, resonates today with me, because as we've heard today, there's so much uncertainty about the current moment and the road ahead. And in times like this, it feels like we've lost our way. But every moment in our history when America has faltered, there have been people who refuse to give up, people who choose action over inaction. And here is what makes this moment special, this moment of opportunity, because those people are all of us. We have the privilege and responsibility of moving forward and never forgetting to continue the fight for justice. Now, one thing that Brooklyn has taught me as district attorney is that the progress doesn't come in a linear straight line, and it doesn't come without struggle. We've experienced setbacks in terms of public safety, in terms of fairness, but don't be mistaken, we have never stopped moving forward. You know, just this past year, I had the occasion on 4 separate times to go to court to ask that a man be exonerated for a crime they were imprisoned on that they did not commit. Let's never forget what that means. These are not just simply errors in our criminal legal system. These are lives, these are families that have been separated, pulled apart. These are opportunities for people who actually were the guilty parties to get away with it and maybe do it again. And it's cost us the trust of our citizens.
What about the thousands and millions that weren't even recognized?
There's a lot of work, brother. There's a lot of work. And one of the things that I can tell you is that the Brooklyn Conviction Review Unit has, in a very short period of time, done 40 exonerations, leading this city and our state in that work. In fact, we've done more exonerations in this county than district attorneys' offices combined across this state. We've also used that opportunity to take a look at allegations of police misconduct, and also have gone to court over 500 times, asking courts to overturn convictions tied to serious allegations of police misconduct. The work continues. We've also taken the opportunity, and Brother Alvin Bragg, DA from your great New York County, talked about mental health and fighting that fight to get people. But who your district attorneys are matter, because we've also gone to court in 2024 and asked courts to come back and overturn real estate fraud and deed fraud cases and return the homes back to people who have been cheated. Our union and labor organizers were here. We secured in Brooklyn millions of dollars in restitution for exploited workers, workers who were cheated of wages, overtime, misclassifications. And who do you think those workers were? They were black and brown people. We've also started to fight to protect our most vulnerable citizens, right? And a lot of the work has been done in our office around cryptocurrency and cyber fraud and other kinds of fraud, because if you know, our seniors are being victimized and being cheated. And so who holds these offices are so important. It's not just about fighting crime, it's about using the sword of the criminal justice system to keep us safe. Now, we heard our great Attorney General talk about the law as both a sword and shield, and I take my obligations to keep our families safe very seriously. And I want you to know that in Brooklyn, we've reduced crime and violence without relinquishing our commitment to justice and fundamental fairness. Today, I can come before all of you this year and tell you that we had historic reductions in gun violence in Brooklyn. In fact, it was the safest year in Brooklyn in terms of gun violence in the history since the New York City Police Department over 30, 40 years ago have been keeping track. We had the fewest number of shootings, the shortest number of shooting victims, and we reduced homicides in the last 4 years consecutively. So I believe Dr. King's vision of fairness and justice continues. We can continue to transform our justice system to make sure that all lives treated fairly in our system. It should not make, no one is above the law, but no one should be beneath the law. Everyone should get a fair shake and a fair shot in doing this work, and we can keep our community safe without going back. God bless all of you. Happy King's Weekend, and know the work continues. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for having me once again here.
Let's give it up for my guy, Eric Gonzalez. I just want to remind all of us that we, at the House of Justice, we demand a level of respect and decorum. And so while these speakers are up, this is not the time to heckle them. Respect the fact that they came before us and they didn't have to. And lastly, just respect yourself. We want to come home to Harlem, District 9, the fighting councilman, Yusef Salam.
You know. Wa alaikum salam. I'm going to start by saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, which means may the peace, mercy and blessings from the owner of all peace, mercy and blessings be upon each and every one of you, and I extend that to your families as well. Y'all know my story. I'm going to pull a line or two out of the page of the mayor by saying that me and my brother Corey, along with 3 others, we went from being rejected to selected to now I'm one of the elected officials in my beloved Harlem, the same place that they kidnapped us from. We were plunged into triple darkness. But because we hold on to faith, by the time we opened our eyes, we were able to see in the dark. I could not have shown up today with all that I know, with all the fight that I have in me, without having grown through what I had to go through with my brothers. Because we went to sleep the night before, wanting the American dream. And we woke up to the American nightmare. When I think about what's coming, I think about the 35 years of struggle, of fight. I think about the fact that the foot of the oppressor was on our necks. I think about the fact that they wanted us to believe that we were our ancestors' wildest nightmares, but we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. I thank Reverend Nile for always standing up for truth, justice, and equality, and for convening the important moments like this. I thank him because we need somebody to rally the masses. When we walked out many times rallying for Kamala, it felt so wonderful. Corey would get up and all he had to say was, what do we want? And the whole place knew we want justice. We want fairness. We want equality. We get the opportunity to use everything that is in our laps and say, how do we bend reality to make sure that the kaleidoscope of the human family is well represented? I look at our journey, and I can't help but think about those biblical figures, Shadrach, Meshach, and if you was in the black church, they said in a bad Negro. And I gotta tell you, even though I'm up here speaking from the podium, Corey is the miracle in this story. He did twice as much time. When I think about other tragic stories like a Khalif Browder, like Corey could have said, you know what? I'm going to just lie and tell them I did it so I can come home early. But if you've seen When They See Us in that powerful, powerful rendition of Corey's life in part 4, when they came to get him for that last parole hearing, they said, come on, get ready. He said, where are we going? He said, it's your parole hearing. He said, I don't want to go. If they don't want to hear my truth, I don't want to waste my time. But look at God using the very thing that broke us, that allowed us to be polished off so that we could be the diamonds that reflect the light. Because diamonds don't shine. Diamonds do not shine. Diamonds reflect the light and the brilliance of what is. And so I want to leave you with this. What are we fighting for? We are fighting for not just freedom, not for justice, not for just equality, not for just equity. We are fighting against spiritual wickedness. I want you to never forget this. We are fighting against spiritual wickedness in high and low places. And I got to tell you, we got to keep on pushing forward. And the last thing I want to share is never forget that this is not about just the next 4 years. This is about us being able to plan into the future generations yet to be born. This is about us doing the necessary work and standing up for ourselves so that 100 to 200 to 300 years, as they continue to pass back that baton in our deoxyribonucleic acid to the generations that are coming, all of those generations will know what to do because they'll know how to break every generational curse. Thank you.
Yusef Salam. We are coming down to the wire. We want to go to Brooklyn, to the Chair of Finance of the New York City Council, Councilman Justin Brennan.
Thank you all. I bring you greetings from Southern Brooklyn. We got any Coney Island left in the house? Come on, any Brooklyn left in the house? All right. I'm Councilman Brennan. It is great to be back here with you to have a meaningful, not a day off, but a day on for MLK Day. Every day at City Hall, I come back to a quote from Martin Luther King, where he talks about how a budget is a moral document. It's not just about how we spend our money, it's about what we spend our money on. And that is the truth serum. You can tell me what you care about, but if I really want to know what you care about, I want to see what you spend your money on. City of New York is no different. City of New York says they care about us. Did they spend their money on us? No. Not enough. $115 billion budget. Does it feel like that? This is the richest city in the world, and people are struggling to get by. The tabloids tell you rich people are leaving the city. It ain't true. You know who's leaving the city? Working families are leaving the city because they can't afford to live here. But we got a weapon. We got a tool to fix that. It's the city budget. $115 billion. If we invest in the programs and priorities that make your life more affordable, well, guess what? We fix it for everybody. And as we head into another budget season now, as chair of the Finance Committee in the City Council, where I oversee and negotiate this budget with City Hall under the leadership of Adrian Adams, the City Council is always going to have your back. We're going to have your back in those rooms. Even if you don't know we're thinking about you, we're fighting for you in those rooms. We're fighting for early childhood education. We're fighting to make sure our parks get cleaned up, making sure our streets are clean, making sure we fund public education, making sure we fund CUNY, our libraries. $115 billion budget, we shouldn't be struggling. Martin Luther King talked about the freedom budget. Let's stop investing in misery and death and destruction. Let's invest in love and lifting each other up. You have my word as chair of the Finance Committee. I'm going to fight like hell for you today and every day. Thank you, Nan.
Justin Brennan, I want to go to Queens really quick, to a person who I've known for a few, not long, but long enough to know about his character and leadership. Right now we'll hear from a friend and brother, Councilman Shekhar Krishnan.
Thank you so much, Reverend Marshall. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. It is so nice to see you all. I want to thank Reverend Sharpton, National Action Network, not only for hosting such a meaningful MLK Day celebration every year, but for the work that each and every one of you do across the country to fight and advance civil rights and racial justice. My name is Shekhar Krishnan. I'm the council member from Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, Queens, and it is such an honor for me to be here. Dr. King has had such a formative influence and been an inspiration to me throughout my adult life. Before being in the New York City Council, for 13 years, I was a civil rights lawyer representing tenants against bad landlords who would shut off heat and hot water in the middle of the night, fighting against NYCHA, making sure that tenants were protected against housing discrimination. And in some of my toughest moments, when justice seemed so far away and unattainable, it was the writings and the words of Dr. King that I would turn to for strength and inspiration. And now, also as a father of two small boys, I often turn to stories of Martin when he was a young boy to tell them about his life and his work. I draw on him and his strength, and one lecture I remember in particular, Where Do We Go From Here? His last address, as the Attorney General mentioned in 1967, as the SCLC president in Atlanta, Georgia. He said, where do we go from here, looking back at how much had been achieved for the cause of racial justice, how much the laws had been changed through the movement, but the fact was that the fight for real racial justice was in our streets, in our communities, that the laws up here must mean something on the ground over here. And I know, not only as a civil rights lawyer before being in the council, but as the first Indian American ever elected to New York City government, the historical bond between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. King. That inspires me so much every day. But if you think about this moment, we are at a where do we go from here moment right now too. We talk about affordable housing and fair housing in this city, but we know that our rent is both unaffordable and unfair. We talk about our families in this city and supporting our families, but the cost of childcare, and as a parent I know it, is one of the most backbreaking costs on families in our city. And we talk about health being wealth, but the chance for you to get to a doctor's appointment, to get the health care you need, is one of the most difficult things we have in this city. And we talk about keeping communities together, but we know the gentrification and displacement that our black and brown communities face every single day from our own home and our own neighborhoods. This is the greatest struggle that we face right now and some of the most urgent civil rights issues of our times. And I turn to two lessons from Dr. King in the Where Do We Go From Here speech that I think we can draw inspiration from. First, he called on us, even in the most difficult and darkest moments, to have an audacious faith. A faith in the awesome God who brings us all together, who is within us and without and around us, that we can draw our strength from. And he also called on us to have a divine dissatisfaction, to be dissatisfied with the inequalities that we see when it comes to housing, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to childcare. And as the chair of the Parks Committee in our New York City Council, I say that we've integrated our parks and our pools. But what about communities like my own that have only one park and not a single public pool? What do we do for them when we talk about the laws up here for civil rights and racial justice, but they mean little on the ground when we see the discrimination that we face in our communities from housing? We talk about diversity, but we see the way in which there are those forces that seek to divide us and demonize immigrants. So let us be divinely dissatisfied and work together and draw on our faith and our strength to fight for a better world. I close with the last words from Dr. King in that same address. Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and comfort from the inner city of poverty and despair are crushed by the battering rams of the forces of justice. Let us be dissatisfied and let us continue the work for a new world. Thank you all so much. Blessings to you all. Happy MLK Day.
Thank you so much. We're on the express train. I want to go to Assemblymember Zorhan Mamdani.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Nan family. Thank you so much to Reverend Sharpton. Thank you so much to everyone who has helped put this together. You know, I want to tell you something that came to mind when Reverend Sharpton spoke about Stokely Carmichael. Took on a new name, Kwame Ture. My name is Zohran Kwame Mamdani. I share a middle name with him. And I think about the man that gave me that name, my father. I was born and raised in a country in East Africa called Uganda. In 1962, we won our independence. My father had just graduated from high school. And as a gift, the United States government gave the Ugandan government 23 scholarships. My father was given one of those scholarships. He came to the University of Pittsburgh to become an electrical engineer. And about 6 or 7 months into his time as a student, he heard the song, "Which Side Are You On? Which Side Are You On?" And it was members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee coming through the halls of that university, asking students to join them on the bus to Montgomery, Alabama. And so my father, who had never left, had never been to the United States in his life, he got up and he got on that bus. He went on that march. And like everyone else who was there, he was brutalized by the police. He spent a night in jail. And he got his one phone call. He called the Ugandan ambassador. And the ambassador said, "What are you doing in jail? We sent you to this country to study." He said, "We just won our freedom. They're fighting for theirs. It's the same struggle." That's what he told him. And that's what he taught me. And when I think about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I think about them also as people that Dr. King listened to. And as we gather here to celebrate King Day and commemorate the 57th anniversary of Dr. King being stolen from us and assassinated, I think it is only right that we listen to Dr. King. And Dr. King said in 1961, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth across this country for every one of God's children. That's what he instructed us. And we know that without following his word, we are left with what we have today. We are in the richest city, in the richest country, in the history of the world, but the working class people who built it can't afford to still call it their home. And when we know that there's a struggle going on, it reminds me of the phrase that has been said, which is that when white America catches a cold, black America gets pneumonia. And I see that in the statistics, because we always talk about how difficult it is for childcare, for rent. From 2010 to 2019, we lost nearly 20% of black children and teenagers in this city. We lost nearly 20% of that population leaving this city because they could not afford this city. And so I stand here today committing to you as an assembly member and as someone who is striving to represent each and every one of you, that we must not only lift every voice, but lift every single New Yorker and ensure that we do those things through the kind of economic programs that Dr. King championed. That's why I believe we have to freeze the rent for more than 2 million New Yorkers. That's why I believe we must have universal childcare whether your baby is 6 weeks or 5 weeks of age. That's why I believe every New Yorker should be able to get on the bus whether or not they can find $2.90 or soon to be $3 in their pocket. That's why I believe those things, because I believe that we must honor Dr. King not only in his words, but in our actions. So thank you so much for having me today. May you have a blessed day.
Assemblyman Mamdani, thank him so much. Right now we have coming down to our last three speakers. we want to go to Hell's Kitchen to Assemblymember Tony Simone.
Thank you. Good afternoon, House of Justice. I'm Assemblymember Tony Simone. I represent the west side of Manhattan. I'm honored and humbled to be here with all of you. Thank you to the National Action Network. Thank you to Reverend Sharpton, to all of you that do the hard work and remind us why we're in public service. Dr. King's most widely known speech is undoubtedly "I Have a Dream," speech given 61 years ago. Not only did he fight for racial justice, but economic justice too. And we have not fulfilled that dream as of yet. At the Chicago Open Housing Movement in 1966, Dr. King spoke on the need for equal opportunity in housing. The history of redlining throughout this nation, this city, we all know about it. When we have tremendous strides towards fulfilling Dr. King's mission, we have much further to go. Affordability in this city is at a crisis point. The cost of childcare, the cost of housing, the cost of food, it's all too expensive. The rent is too damn high. So many of our families, so many brown and black families, my Latino mom, my Italian-American dad, have been priced out of this city and state because we don't have enough housing. We don't have enough affordable housing. We don't have enough middle-income housing and supportive housing for those New Yorkers with the most challenges. While the cost of living is too high, I have seen so many discount the value of life and look the other way. Across our great city, our fellow New Yorkers are in crisis. Our mental crisis, we're living with a mental health care crisis right now. When our members of community cannot care for themselves due to the depth of the mental crisis and substance use and homelessness, when our neighbors become a violent threat to themselves or others, it is our duty to help them, to lift them from the crisis. We must treat this as a mental health crisis as it is and spend the money, create housing for them, reach out to them. We must get them into the healthcare system because before they are forced into the criminal justice system. Looking at our state of our streets, it's time to ask ourselves, are we truly compassionate that we're letting our fellow New Yorkers live on the street without the mental health care they need and the housing that they need? We need supportive housing in every district in the state. Allowing a person to continue on this path is leaving them as a victim of their illness and in a constantly worsening state. That is not compassion. As I return to Albany with my great colleagues who have spoken before me, we must build housing for every New Yorker and every neighborhood so we're not priced out, so folks don't have to leave our great state. We must enact universal child care so families can afford to raise their kids in our great city. We also must provide free meals for everyone so there's not the stigma of when you go to school not be able to afford to feed yourselves. Our kids' bellies must be full so they can actually learn and thrive in every neighborhood in the city. Friends, as many in the room like myself have fear and anxiety about what's to come, about our future in the coming weeks and months, we know our values. Like the borough president, others before me said, and the great Reverend Sharpton said, it may not be a coincidence that who's coming to be inaugurated on the great day that we celebrate a great man, Martin Luther King. But we must remember our values. We must march for what we believe in. We must not let them divide us. Mass deportations is wrong. Mass deportations will cause violence and division. Don't let your anger be misdirected. We have the money to help us all. Don't let leaders tell you that it's the migrants' fault, or a person of color's fault, or someone who is down and trodden who has to sleep on our subways. It's not their fault. We must lift us all if we are to succeed as a great city. I point to the beacon of light shining across the gateway to America. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send me the homeless, tempest to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. While our future may be uncertain and we may be headed into scary times, what is clear that all our hands in this room, all your actions are needed to guide us way forward. We can only do it together. Thank you so much.
Tony Simone. Representing the Upper East Side of Manhattan, we have with us today Assemblyman Alex Boris.
Good afternoon, House of Justice. How you doing? Okay, y'all have stamina, my God. It's the third time I've been to this event, but the first time where we've been mixing it with the Saturday service. And that third Monday in January should be chiseled in stone as just about Dr. King. But of course, this Monday, Reverend Sharpton and many of you We'll be marching on Washington. We'll be speaking truth to power while a very different celebration occurs down there. You know, MLK Day has only fallen on Inauguration Day once before. That was 1997. And President Clinton in his address said, like a prophet of old, MLK told of his dream that one day America would rise up and treat all its citizens as equals, before the law and in the heart. MLK's dream was all of our dream. His quest is our quest. I'm not holding my breath that we hear the same thing on Monday. But we should, because that dream remains unfulfilled. That work remains undone. We can't be content with just a dream. We keep faith alive that our promised land is just over that hill, but we still have to walk up that hill ourselves. Right? Scripture tells us that faith without works is dead. Faith without works, and there's so much work to do. We have a housing market that makes it unaffordable for people to stay in the neighborhood they grew up in and then discriminates against them when they try to move. We have a healthcare system that's still dismissive of black pain and a maternal mortality rate that we wouldn't accept in the developing world happening right here in America. We have an economy that deems black workers essential during a pandemic and then automates their work away in the economic boom afterwards. And we have a criminal justice system whose results still seem better predicted by the color of one's skin than by the content of their character. We need a judiciary that looks like the people of this city. We need to deliver fast trials that respect the rights of both defendants and the victims, because justice delayed. So while what we say today is important, what we do is far, far more important. And so I'm going to redouble my effort with all of you to bring about a city, state, and country that Dr. King would be proud of. We have great challenges coming. Let's not be naive about that. But no greater than what Dr. Martin Luther King faced in his time. If he faced that, we can face what's coming. And together, if we combine our faith and our works, and we're inspired by the strength of the ancestors, if we follow the guidance of the Reverend Doctor, then we shall overcome. Have a blessed day.
Last but not least, we want to go across the bridge to our brother from the Bronx, representing the High Bridge section of the Bronx, our brother Assemblyman Landon Days.
Good afternoon. I can't hear you. Good afternoon. It's always a blessing. I might represent the Bronx, but I am a son of Harlem. I am looking forward tomorrow when my frat brother, Reverend Al Sharpton, will be at Abyssinian Baptist Church to give the good word. But on this day, which is for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my Morehouse brother, we are here for that celebration. A lot of people might not know, Dr. King got a D in public speaking at Morehouse College. And we might laugh at that, but how often has someone been written off? How often has a piece of paper has determined your future because someone misjudged you because of the color of your skin or because where you were born? How many of those who look like us have been judged by someone who did not understand your circumstances? The reality is what Dr. King really did was giving people an understanding that they deserve to be seen. How many of y'all do not feel like you get seen by your elected officials? How many of y'all feel like you don't get heard by your elected officials? And how many know that many of them don't fight for you? The reality is what Dr. King changed was our ability to believe in the hope and what the future of our country can be. I want you to remember a very key number. I want you to say it with me. 1,025. I need you to say it louder. 1,025. This is why 1,025 matters to you. Most of us came from slavery. It took at least 10 generations for you to be here today. That means if not for 1,024 of your ancestors, you would not be sitting in your seat today. If one of them did not make it through the Middle Passage, you would not be here today. If one of your boats went to the different port and your great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather never met, you would not be here today. And the reason why that matters is because that means your number matters. You are here for a reason. You are a mathematical equation that only God can create, and we cannot take that for granted. This is the house that Reverend Sharpton built. His name might be on the front, but the people in this room are the bricks and mortar that keep this room going. No different than that Martin Luther King Day is not just about Dr. King, but it's about the many people who are in the same very rooms like today, whose names might not be on a church or on a wall or in a museum, but they are the fiber of the civil rights movement. You are the fiber of Dan, you are the fiber of our community, and even though your name might not be on that book, without you, that book is not written. When we really look at Dr. King, what he really gave us was the belief in ourselves to make a difference and change in our community. And that is what, at all, when he died, he understood. If you go to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, and you look at that motel balcony, he could see that bullet coming. But he knew, because of the fibers of the people like you in our community, that his dream would live on. At the end of the day, everyone has the ability to be great because everyone can serve. You don't need a college degree to serve. You do not need to know verbs and subjects agree. All you need is a heart full of grace and a soul full of love. Thank you so much. Enjoy your King Day. Thank you.
Give it up for Reverend Landon Days. That brother knows what he's talking about. We are at the conclusion of our King Day Policy Forum. We thank all of the elected leaders. Can we give all the elected leaders a hand for coming? And most importantly, we want to thank all of you. Give yourselves a hand for staying. And so we have heard all of the plans and policies that they have laid out. It is now time to hold them accountable. And so it's going to take us to make this moment of not just sharing, but not make it ceremonial in the sense that we don't remember what they said. How many of you are going to D.C. with us on Monday? All right. Just bring 2 coats. I'm just trying to tell you. It's going to be cold. 2 coats and Long Johns. Again, we thank all of you for joining us today. And two, 3. The sister said 3 coats. And some Long Johns. We thank all of you again for coming. And at this time, you are dismissed. Thank you and God bless.